disinformation campaigns on social media. Are they intentionally targeting African Americans with this anti-vax narrative?
I don't know, but I will say that I saw a young Native woman, saying she had COVID maybe 4 months ago. So I saw her on Facebook, and one of her friends, who I presume might also be Native, said, well, hold off, don't trust this thing, because our generation, we don't know what's going to be the long-term effects of these vaccines. So yeah, I do think, and I imagine that they might be the same bots that were targeting the Black community prior to the November elections. So there were lots of posts around how Kamala is not really for the Black community. I mean, just nonsense. But I think that it's that same kind of circle of misinformation that has just gotten into people's algorithms, and so they've repositioned from being like anti, Biden and Kamala Harris, to anti-vax and, don't trust the government, don't trust health, don't trust science.
Okay.
That's my sense.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Is it because they're more vocal about it on public space?
Oh, that's a great point. Cheryl. And God bless the African American community. That aspect of that community is that, I think they are a bit more vocal. And if
you know what, in Japan, there are many people, they are not anti-vaxxer, but they believe in more holistic healing. So they are not desperate for vaccine. Yeah.
Right. But I think that's a really interesting point I had not considered, which is, I think that's actually an applaudable characteristic of the African American communities. When they think something, they're less they're less afraid to express it. Yeah. And God bless that. And so maybe it is that. Cheryl, that's a great point I hadn't considered.
I think so.
Tyler, if you actually look at the numbers in the United States, where the largest numbers of percentage-wise are unvaccinated, it's southern states, and it's not because of African Americans not getting vaccination. Right. It's a political thing with the Republicans.
That too. However, a lot of people witnessed over the weekend, Donald Trump went to Mississippi and did a rally and got up and said, I understand your freedoms, but I think you should get the vaccine. And then the crowd booed him. And
so was that after people started taking like horse dewormification medicine and filling up the ERs? Did you see that?
Yeah. We're going to I got that headline coming up soon, but
good. Wow. Juicy.
Well, the FDA came out and says you're not a horse. Don't stop taking this. No.
So you may not trust the scientists, but you're going to trust, the local feed store to take a medicine that's made for horses and cows.
Ouch. I mean, that's the most ironic thing about this entire thesis here, right? You're again, and believe me, I'm the type, when I get a headache, I do not grab the Tylenol right away. I have not had a flu shot in 20 plus years.
Me too.
But when I heard this has never hit human beings before, and it was wrecking us, I took a shot at the vaccine. But the most ironic thing about it is, yes, it's EUA, meaning it's not fully approved by the FDA.
Until today. It's getting approved today, literally today.
Were you guys talking about PFE?
But see, so here, hang on one second. With all due respect to anyone that believes in holistic medicine or naturalistic healing, of which I do believe.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's good for epidemiology. And what I'm getting at is these people hide behind, I'm a nutraceutical, I'm a supplement, so they don't have to be FDA approved. Right. Take my supplement that's not FDA approved.
Okay, I think their main point is when you look at the number of before vaccine, number of cases, and the cases causing hospitalization or causing death compared to the other way, meaning to say that number of cases versus those people who heal naturally, the number is much higher.
Yeah, but Cheryl, let me be clear.
So that's the thing that say that you have to build your immune system and it will take care of itself.
Okay, that's Cheryl, but when Ellen and I spent a considerable amount of hours in multiple rooms here in Clubhouse over the weekend, and I not noticed them until this weekend, and I, you know me, I if you follow us, if you've been in tech news for more than a month, I going back, I track the data of people going in and out of rooms analytically, so I can see when rooms get shadow banned, and it's very visual on a graph, like a stock chart. You can see the room going along, kind of going up slowly, kind of going sideways, and then bam, all of a sudden, boom, like the traffic starts dropping very quickly because it's no longer visible in the hallway. That room does not appear in the hallway. The only way you could find it is if a friend invites you into the room, or you look in that friend find feature and you see where your friends are, and oh, they're in that room. Okay, I'll go there. It's just the room is gone from the hallway. That's Clubhouse does that when there's a room going on that they don't want people to see. And you can see that in the traffic of the room. And then even the speakers on stage say, we've just been shadow banned because we have friends trying to find this room and they can't find it in the hallway. It doesn't exist in the hallway. And they know they've been shadow banned, and they're right. And I can see the precise second that change happened. So that's partly why I like going into these rooms. As the first thing Cheryl said when we started, 10 minutes ago was, you've been researching COVID vaccines? And it's a joke. Yeah, I've been in these rooms because I'm studying shadow banning. So I hang out in the room and I'm watching, and all of a sudden, bada boom, somebody, some moderator on behalf of Clubhouse shadow bans it, and then the traffic starts declining quite quickly. Anyway, but I want to raise the point that yes, there are some people, like the title of that room that's going on right now is about holistic alternatives. That's cool. That I got no issue with that. That's actually kind of a smart room concept of like, what are the holistic things one can do to build versus COVID. Whether or not you're pro-vaccine or not, it's a great topic of like, what are the holistic things you can do? Vitamin D and exercise and blah blah blah.
Agree. I'm addicted to Sambucol. It's a elderberry product that the Israelis use. So I am not going to say that I am not into natural ailments, and I take it religiously. So
here's the point, though: is time and time again, the overarching point that's being raised in these rooms are this is nanotechnology being embedded into people, and everyone's going to die who takes this thing, and that they're tracking that this is about editing your DNA. That phrase comes up in about half of the people in that room.
You forgot about the 5G, Tyler.
No, believe it or not, in fairness, 5G almost never comes up in that room, in all those rooms we were in.
I think Charles may have some insights regarding this editing genes thing.
Okay, but my point is that a shocking amount, consistently, 5G doesn't come up. Gene editing does, over and over and over and over again. And
so why don't they take a Johnson & Johnson vaccine that works differently, and it's not?
That's what I did.
Okay, yeah.
Or non-mRNA, or even what's the other one? Or AstraZeneca.
The thing is, AstraZeneca's had issues in England, but there'll be another one out soon called Novavax, which is also not an RMNA vaccine, which is looks like has a lot of efficacy.
The thing is, it's random people on the internet making up just like whatever crazy thing they decide to make up, and it's whatever sticks, whatever gets propagated as a good meme gets repeated over and over, and that's what you hear.
Right. So on to that point, there's certainly a bit of that. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because you're going to think I'm making this up, but that's why I actually asked Ellen, and I collaborated to make sure she's here to verify what I'm about to say, because the moderator of the room was criticizing the room, that let's really get real here for a second. Let's really break a piece off and really say what's really happening. And then he proceeded to do a PTR of his image, and he updated it to the Discovery, the Discovery credit card. In America, we have MasterCard and Visa. Those are the two popular ones. We have two other ones, American Express and Discovery. Discover. But Discover's kind of gone. I haven't heard of it in like 10 years, but it was around. It used to be a thing. It might still be a thing. Anyway, It's a credit card company, and in their logo, the Discover, the O is an orange circle with a little bit of a red circle behind it, right? And this gentleman proceeds to say, let's really get serious here for a second, everybody. Have you not all heard about the two suns? That people are reporting there are now two suns. And there's proof, there's videos, there's people reporting, like up near Alaska, that they're seeing two suns. And one is deep red, and the other's orange. And then he pulls up his PTR of the Discover logo with the two suns, and then he says, but check this out. And then he pulls up the MasterCard logo, which, if you remember the MasterCard logo, it's like an orange circle and a red circle, and they're kind of overlapped a little bit. And he's all, so explain this. How can the MasterCard and Discover both have the dark red and the orange sun with different layers of overlapping?
Why sad?
Well, it was certainly proof enough for Disco Dave in the room.
So Tyler, I stopped in one of those rooms today because I saw that you were in. I was curious why you were in a room like that, because I thought you probably already knew all this stuff. But now I understand what
Is
you
it a
were doing.
coincidence?
So
Yeah.
is
So,
the
yeah.
is the finance sector creating COVID? I don't get it.
No, the reason behind this is because this is why we had the stay-at-home order, so they could bring out the new sun without anyone noticing or something.
But I thought these people were crazy, Tyler. So I kind of left the room that you were in because I listened to a little bit of it, and they said these people are all nuts, and that was it.
Was there any talk of the Illuminati? I mean, it sounds like something that would surface in one of those kinds of rooms.
I'm just concerned about it. Is there a big misinformation campaign? But I think Cheryl figured it out. Maybe it's just the African American community is willing to be vocal about it, and it's why
when anyone brings up the potential of two suns, can you explain to them how gravity works?
Yeah, somebody did come up and someone tried in the room to say, "You guys understand if there's two suns, it would be a lot hotter." And maybe that's their point. Maybe that's why
it's not even the heat though. It would literally tear the planet apart.
Somebody said that actually.
But Chris, they're probably flat earthers too. So
anyway,
hey, Tyler,
the sad part of. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say quickly before I joined this room, waiting for it to open up. I was in a flat earther room because, one is curious during these times where I can't do much else because I'm based in Sydney.
You want to expand your horizons, no pun intended.
Exactly. And it was fascinating because, and I was looking for it now in the hallway and I can't find it. So if you want to
it went over the horizon,
yeah, exactly.
It fell off
Banning it and things like that. Because one thing
You're on
that they
fire,
ended up
Tyler.
going to was that there's no, obviously, but with the moon landing, disbelieving that we landed on the moon, and I texted to a friend of mine because someone said literally there's no proof that you guys went to space. And the room got really, really interesting. So I think in combination with potentially anti-vax, and if you're studying sort of shadow banning and things like that, keeping an eye out on flat earther rooms, I think is worthwhile, because that room was crazy.
So
who makes the money on the flat earth? I mean, I think you really have to use that as your best ally, is that the money thing is really, I think that's got to be that's going to be the only unifier for that group. They need to be swayed by why are you persuaded to think like this? Think critically. Why are you, who has a financial incentive for you to believe in this theory that, the planet's thought of, has believed another theory since, Galileo, since we moved in.
I wouldn't necessarily restrict it to financial interests, because the thing is that it really seems to me that the flat Earth thing came about like a bit ahead of the tampering in the 2016 election, and I really think that it was like the test bed number one for disinformation campaigns from the Internet Research Agency, and number two, kind of a recruiting tool or a profiling tool to figure out who would be a useful dupe.
Okay.
To me, is like the sad part of it is, Tyler, there are millions of people who believe it. That's the sad part of it. Whether you are like whatever your political persuasion is, you started something, you kind of associated COVID with something else, and now you have another theory and QAnon and stuff. You go on and on and on. I have those from my husband's family members. We have dinner with them. You can't reason with those people. It's just there's got to be some kind of emotional discussion you need to have, and have another kind of, I don't know, understanding and reasoning with them. Even having therapy. It's not logic. It's not explanation. It's not. There are millions
I
of
mean,
people who believe
I
that.
think, I'm sorry to speak over you, but I think they need to hear that being called sheep and them not following what the person calling them a sheep is not being a sheep. Like that's
Yes.
the, that's the challenge is like this is the fifth grade playground mentality.
Oh, this is a
They're
good point,
double
Chris.
reversed sheep.
Yes. No, the
But
point the
I
point
also
is that they've been told the news is fake, the news is fake, the news is fake, the news is fake, and they just now inherently distrust the system. And so if it's coming from the system or the deep state or the powers that be, these government agencies, if it's coming from a government agency, they're likely to not believe it, whatever they're saying. Like they could say the sky is blue and they're going to now question if in fact the sky is blue because, the FDA just said the sky is blue. They're likely to not believe that anymore. And that would be an interesting test. I think I
Yeah,
just figured out what my new narrative is going to be when I enter
I
those
mean,
rooms. I'm going to come out and say,
that's what it would have.
the FDA has just come out to say that, in fact, the sky is blue. And what do we think of that now? And then see if,
So
That
one of
was
because I
that
suspect
was.
that
I'm
they will
sorry,
quickly
Latif.
start questioning if the sky is blue if they find out that the FDA has officially, made it a statement. Or if Dr. Fauci says the sky is blue, they're going to quickly start coming up with reasons why it's not.
Well, and one of
exactly.
my
So that's
cousins
the problem.
posted last week. He said, I never would have imagined that, the survival of humanity will depend on people who never took education seriously. And by and large, right? So it comes down to critical thinking. Do you trust the scientists or do you trust something that you saw on YouTube? And I think that goes across communities. But there is a lot of disinformation and people, they just really get wedded to these ideas and it's hard to break those mental holds.
Okay, we got to get
So
we got to get
so
into the
there's
news there.
Even when you see it personally, I'm sorry to say this over and over, but my sister-in-law literally almost died and her mom died, and they saw that. My husband's family saw that. They were there, and I explained to them, look at what's happening, and they still say that it's not as bad as what you think. It's not what government says. How can you change a person's mind if you can show them that your family member is dying, has been hospitalized 3 times, and have chronic disease now, lung blood clot? I mean, if they don't believe that, if they don't believe their own eyes, what can you do?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I
Okay,
get emotional
thank
about
you,
this.
Messy. We got to leave it there, and I'm sure
Yeah,
it'll come
move
back up because we
on.
got more headlines related to it that we'll circle back to.
Let's
So
do this.
let's do it. Okay, so the top tech news headline at this very moment. By the way, I hope everyone had a lovely weekend and a happy Monday morning to everyone waking up around Europe, and a lovely Monday afternoon across Asia here. So the biggest news in tech at the moment is from Mark Gurman, who is known to always knows what's going on with Apple before it's announced. So the headline is that there is a high-end M1X Mac Mini with an updated design and more ports than the current M1 Mac Mini, should replace the Intel model in the next several months. So let me unpack this for people who aren't uber geeks. The Apple makes a device called a Mac Mini, which is basically a tiny little computer in a box with no monitor, and you could almost fit it in your hand. And it's kind of like a laptop without a screen or a keyboard, is what it is. It's an easy way to think of it. And so, they released one, I don't know, 9 months ago, and it had the new M1 processor, which everybody loves. So what Mark Gurman is saying is there's another even better Mac Mini coming out with the new M1X chip, and this is what's getting Apple fans so excited, because so far there are no devices with the M1X chip in it. And so he's saying this one has the M1X chip in it, and we're gonna see how powerful this M1X chip really is, because the next Apple laptops that come out are expected to also have the M1X chip in it, which is the new improved M1 chip. So the M1X Mac Mini with updated design and more ports than the current M1 Mac Mini should replace the Intel model in the next several months. Okay. That's the big news.
I gotta say this is awesome, and then I'm also in love. I just got the new iMac, and I'm running a bunch of SolidWorks, so it's like CAD software and CFD. Normally, it would take an Intel machine, much longer, and it's snappier. Of course, if I had a workstation with like 20 cores or something like that, it wouldn't compete. But for like a home class computer, this thing is nuts.
Yeah. So the next big headline is from the Washington Post. And boy, does this have a whole lot of tweets online. It says Facebook releases a previously not visible Q1 content transparency report, acknowledging the widespread reach of content casting doubt on COVID vaccines. And this is wild. The social media platform Saturday evening acknowledgement comes after lengthy internal debate whether or not to share this data. And you'll understand why. That when they came out, let me unpack this, and if maybe Michelle can jump in or not, I understand if she can't. So there is a tool that Facebook has that allows journalists and some people have access to see what is the most engaged content on Facebook. And by engaged content, we mean content that people are clicking on and liking and commenting on. That is totally different than the most viewed content, which is not engaged with. Separate concepts. One has the most views, one has the most clicks and likes and comments. So Facebook has a tool for people to see what has the most engagement. And it turns out that the most engagement content each day, and it's updated every day, is almost dominated each day by Ben Shapiro's show, which is a little video show, and Dan Bonagino's show, also a little video podcast. And both of those are notably far right in their kind of tonality and perspective and philosophy. Okay. And that caused a lot of journalists who watch this each day, who are trying themselves to be in the top 10 pieces of engaged content. They noticed, man, this is always these far right bloggers who always seem to dominate, causing them to assume that Facebook must be, as a platform, very far right leaning. And then Facebook says, not so fast. Here is for the Q2, January, March, April, May, and June. Here is our new report, this transparency report of the most viewed content. And please note the notable lack of far right content on the most viewed content. And in fact, looking at the most viewed content, it was a lot of like totally benign, cat videos and stuff like that. So there you go. Case closed. We're not a far right leaning platform. But whoa, not so fast, Mark. Because then the New York Times comes hot on the mic saying emails show that Facebook has intentionally squashed the previous 3 months for January, February, March, Q1, that the content transparency report for Q1 was intentionally kind of being hidden because they were fearing public criticism, as the most viewed link in Q1 was about a doctor who died of a COVID vaccine. And now that was over the weekend. And then today, in the past few hours, Washington Post headline reads, Facebook releases the previously shelved Q1 content transparency report acknowledging the widespread reach of content casting doubt on COVID vaccines, which was some of the most viewed content in Facebook. And this is causing a brouhaha in social media platform. Saturday evening acknowledgement comes after lengthy internal debate over whether to share the data.
Tyler, you know what I'd like to see? Yeah. The demographics that go along with that. What's the age ranges of the people that actually engage with that information?
Yeah, me too. And this goes right back to our previous conversation about why is it these the anti-vax rooms that are here in Clubhouse over the weekend that Ellen and I spent lots of hours in. Why are they all so over very the demographic breakdown is very strongly African American, and why is that? And then Cheryl had a great point, which is just, we can't confirm it, but I really feel like she figured something out that it totally escaped my mind, which is perhaps just demographically they're not as afraid as to express their very socially unacceptable views, so to say. They're willing to speak out, against the meta narrative that we should be getting vaccines. I believe there's some truth to her point there, and I think that's a very laudable, applaudable aspect, trait of the African American community. Is they aren't as afraid to say something if they believe it, even who it doesn't matter. The powers that be are trying to say one thing, they're willing to stand up and say with something, to challenge it.
Someone needs to give it. Someone just needs to say, "Hey, I got to give it to you straight," and that would literally go so far.
Well, Tyler, I mean, the interesting thing is there's no shortage, and I've been in these rooms. I even know one or two of the doctors. There's no shortage of African American doctors on this app who've been advocating vaccines.
Yes.
No shortage. I've been in plenty of rooms with them.
I'll tell you what.
Okay, so
there was one in the room Ellen and I were in. He was having no luck convincing this audience of his medical perspectives.
Yeah. So what I was also alluding to age ranges, because one of the things that I've noticed is a lot older populations, even though they were willing to get the vaccine, like let's say the 70 to 90 age range, but there's sort of the sweet spot of a younger boomer population, maybe that's very conservative, right-winged, that's very sort of conspiratorial as well as right-leaning.
But it's also young people. I see a lot of young people, actually, like the guy that I'm dating is from Peru. And in his community, like it's the same thing. And it's the young people who are kind of propagating this information and spreading, videos which are anti-vaccine and conspiracy theories. And they're just like really, really, sharing it between each other. And they don't want to get the vaccine, often talking about, that this is a way for the big companies to make money. And they're basically against that a lot of the time.
So here's a weird thing. But by the way, am I crazy and sorry, Shane, to interrupt you, but I never noticed these anti-vax rooms before in Clubhouse until very relatively recently, and now
they've been around forever.
Oh, they have. Okay.
Right. They have.
Okay.
Recently, there are more because of this vaccine card and vaccine passport requirement, which pisses a lot of people off. Because prior to that, they have a choice, but right now, kind of those people who are not getting vaccinated are being discriminated, and they have already created a lot of inconvenience for them. So,
well, I'll tell you what, it might this is again another very good point, Cheryl, because that might get worse in the near future because it's expected that the Pfizer vaccine will get full FDA approval today, Monday, when America wakes up, when we meet next time in about 8 hours. And pardon my dogs here, but when the FDA, the headline from The Guardian right now says full FDA approval for Pfizer COVID shot will enable vaccine requirements. FDA is trying to finish licensing process as soon as Monday. Full federal approval of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine will empower businesses and universities to require vaccinations and tip hesitant Americans towards getting the jab, the Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said on Sunday. We already know that there are many businesses and universities that have moved towards vaccination requirements, Murthy told CNN State of the Union, and I think it's a very reasonable thing to do to create a safe environment. But the idea that that this could empower, give people legal power to enforce it is concerning, I guess. But I hope it comes with some people would be less likely. It'll certainly kill the narrative that this was a rushed thing, because we hear this a lot in the rooms about that this whole thing is an experimental vaccine and it's rushed. And now with the FDA approval, hopefully, knock on wood, some people will feel more comfortable about it now that it has full FDA approval.
And Moderna is supposed to be like right behind Pfizer, maybe only by days.
Yeah, they're not.
When
They're barely different. Yeah, but
yeah.
Alonzo, sorry, welcome.
What's up, Tyler? I will just say this briefly. My mother is one of the last three people to be on the Brown versus Board of Education scholarship. I've just been listening to the conversation, and I will say that I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine myself, so I'm not an anti-vaccination person, but I do want to bring context to just say I think it's very insensitive to not understand why there might be distrust in the African American community.
Yeah, no, we're trying to be as empathetic as possible, my friend.
Yeah, so with the long-standing history there.
Oh, I get that. And I get Tuskegee all day long, Alonzo. I get that.
Well, not the Tuskegee thing is just one particular incident. There's a whole lot of other things that we could go down a rabbit hole with.
Yeah, it's systemic distrust, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's not even just the well, it's more than medical, but I'm talking about even if we just stayed in the realm of all the different things that's happened in the medical sphere, there has been a very deep and dark history within our community and things that's happened to us. Just, Henrietta Lacks, the Tuskegee experiment, even the football players who were treated at a different pain level when it came to concussions. I mean, on and on and on and on.
I got to be back in 2 minutes. Keep it going.
I will digress. No. Oh, he said keep it going. No, I'm just, there's just a lot of distrust there. So with that being said, if you take that type of distrust and then also the things that happen in the media outside of the medical sphere that gain national attention, I mean, this was just a perfect storm brewing why there would be such a huge, distrust in our community.
Alonzo, can I ask you a question? I have a friend I met here on Clubhouse. His name is Dr. Stephen Thomas out of the University of Maryland. And he's doing a barbershop type program where he's trying to get barbers in the local areas to engage with customers to maybe give them more informed decision-making process. Because just like you, I did do Johnson & Johnson, not because of any extreme vaccine hesitancy, but because the mRNA did not seem as road tested in humans as the other. In retrospect, if that was the only opportunity I had, I would take it. So my question is, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this is an effective approach, or do you think this is futile?
Well, I think it's seemingly one of those dog and pony show things that get thrown at us, just like, there's a community that wants reparations, but we got a Juneteenth celebration. I mean, I think the history with African Americans in this country, it's everybody knows what that is. and everybody knows all the atrocious stuff that keeps on continually happening to our community, but nobody is really working to put some hard things in to rectify situations and problems. Flint still has dirty drinking water. So why should we, trust the system? Why should we trust the man, quote unquote? Um, it behooves me when, to hear people talk about things like intellectual property theft from China, when how much intellectual property has been stolen from the African American community. And if we want to keep it medical, think about what happened to Henrietta Lacks, and her family is still not compensated, and we still use her cells, HeLa cells, in modern medicine to this day.
So, if you had one thing to throw out there? I'm sorry if anyone had to speak. Go ahead. I'm trying to help Ty. If you had one thing to throw out there, what do you think you would do? What do you think you would say? What would you try?
That's a tough one. I mean, that is extremely a tough one.
How about masks?
I mean, I think people wear masks. That's so funny. Usually, where I'm at, I see a large portion of African Americans wearing masks, but the ones that I don't, are in communities where it's just there's nothing to lose. I think some people have been put. COVID has done more than just destroy people through a medical illness. The disease, whatever it is, the virus itself. It's decimated communities, as far as jobs and poverty and whatnot. So some people just don't feel like they have anything to lose, at all.
I think the problem, though, is that many people don't believe in COVID. So this is like they're not getting, they're not wearing masks and they're not getting vaccinated because they believe that this is a conspiracy theory thing. It's, like that COVID actually doesn't exist. It's just the flu. It's nothing different than anything else.
Magda, I'm sorry, but when I say that there are some people out there who don't feel like they have anything to lose, it's that deep.
And let's look at the communities where, especially like phase one, before Delta was affecting very strongly. Those were the communities, the African American communities saw that COVID is real because a lot of our elderly people were being taken out.
Hey, Alfonso, we have a lot of people from around the world in this room. Why don't you tell everybody? Because I think there's a lot of people, even some Americans, who don't know the Henrietta Lacks story. So until Tyler comes back, maybe you want to it's not as well known as Tuskegee. So maybe you want to tell people what that was.
Okay,
That would be great.
I'm back. Tuskegee was
Tyler, what's up?
It was revealed that the government was doing shady tests. Well, it was
we were talking about this Henrietta Lacks thing with her cell line, which is another issue, which is another thing that our society did wrong with African Americans, but it's not as well known as Tuskegee. And we were trying to use time until you came back, so I just asked Alfonso if he wanted to talk about it, because I think there's a lot of people who don't know about it, particularly
people should. It's a really America needs to come clean on that one. So this FDA approval. Let's see what happens tomorrow with all that. So the next one, the next big headline of kind of what's most popular at the moment is from The Verge that says Elon Musk's Tesla bot is a distraction and an empty promise, considering the progress of Boston Dynamics Atlas, which has been in development for over 10 years. And I'll just read you a bit of this because it's this journalist who wrote this, James Vincent, is really jumping hot on the mic on this one. He says, after a dense presentation about the undeniably impressive work Tesla is doing with AI, which, by the way, let's start there. Like the AI Day video, which anyone can now watch on YouTube, although you probably won't want to unless you have a PhD in computer science. Like they get really into the deep end of the pool really quickly. And but it is super, super impressive. And then they kind of end the event because that event, as impressive as it is really only impressive to people who are like uber black belt geeks. If you're not, it's like watching, people talking about physics. It'll go way over any normal person's head. So there's no big headline generated from Tesla AI Day, although they certainly whipped something up that caused a whole bunch of headlines, which was this announcement of a humanoid robot. And that's what they're taking issue with here, is because of the way that it was announced, where he said, oh yeah, it'll come out in about a year or so. And as Musk said, that building a human replacement robot, something no company in the world is even close to achieving, was a logical step forward from Tesla's work developing self-driving cars. And anyway, so this article makes a strong point that there's no way he's going to make this. And in fact, he interviews somebody named Carl Berry, a lecturer in robotics engineering at UK's University of Central Lancashire, put things to me in less uncertain terms. And this is Carl speaking, who's a lecturer at UK's University in robotic engineering. He says, calling it horse shit sounds generous, frankly. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be doing research like this, but it's the usual overblown hype. So The Verge coming on quite strongly on this whole humanoid robot announcement, which they have a point. No one's been able to do this. Not even Boston Dynamics. They've been at it for over a decade. So it's for Tesla to come out with it deserves a little extra criticism, perhaps. So maybe not that they will eventually make it, but within a year, that is wildly surprising. If that will come to be true, is the point of this article, according to The Verge. So the next biggest headline at this moment is from CoinDesk. And it says how Facebook has struggled to scale Diem and Libra before it due to data privacy issues and regulatory scrutiny as Diem's Novi wallet readies for market. And this is a really interesting conversation to be had. Is Diem what the world needs? Great question. It's a start. Economist Daryl Duffy says Facebook learned pretty quickly it wouldn't be able to. Hold on one second. Facebook learned pretty quickly it wouldn't be able to move fast and break things in the world of payments. What a great opening sentence in this paragraph, because historically Facebook internally had this kind of mentality, and they even wrote it on the wall, move fast and break things. And that doesn't apply to fintech. So as Facebook is now getting into much bigger and more important things like fintech, yeah, move fast and break things is not the approach with the kind of financial markets. So finance requires trust, and the company had done none when it announced its stablecoin project, then called Libra, now called Diem, in 2019. The social media company was widely seen as having enabled the spread of disinformation, and the Cambridge Analytica scandal showed it losing control of user data, a factor highly relevant to discussions of Libra. As the Diem attached Novi digital wallet readies for market 2 years later, a lifetime in crypto. 2 years later is a lifetime in crypto. It remains to be seen whether regulators and the public will be willing to accept and use this corporate-driven attempt to create a global payments medium. We deserve a fair shot, says David Marcus, Facebook's head of financial services, who also previously kind of was the driving force behind Facebook Messenger, wrote in a blog on Wednesday. But even when it comes to trustless blockchain-based services, reputation matters, as does public faith. So the question is, what will be the fate now that Facebook's kind of now ramping up for a big second version 2.0 push of their vision for a digital currency, which knowing Facebook is probably a very ambitious. And we've heard from Michelle that they've been focused on testing this digital wallet in Africa and apparently Israel, and that's quite interesting because Africa could use a solution. Honestly, I think Mabana might agree with that. The question is Facebook the right solution? And that's obviously up for debate. And then there's something even more interesting to debate on this issue, which is the idea of a wallet and the idea of a currency are two totally separate things. And Facebook could have a wallet, and even I believe even David Marcus himself even conceded that if regulators just really don't make it possible for Facebook to do their own currency, because they call the wallet Novi, the currency is called Diem. And if regulators say, nah, we don't like Diem, but of course anyone can do a wallet. That isn't as overly regulated as is, letting Facebook have a currency, and there isn't as much trust issues with Facebook having a digital wallet. There's all kinds of tiny startups with digital wallets. But how much support or resistance should society and governments and regulators take with regard to Facebook's currency? And David Marcus is saying we deserve a fair shot. Is this kind of his point there? So.
Yeah, Tyler, here in Ethiopia, actually, a couple of days ago, forget about Facebook having its own currency or wallet or any kind of involvement in Ethiopia. The government is actually saying that they are trying to get rid of Facebook and have their own Facebook, just even those social network ones. So, yeah, here you go. We have a lot of African government, individual countries having their own regulations. So it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah.
Tatal, I was also going to add that a related headline, tangential but important to kind of think about the timing, is I don't know if you saw that there was Nigeria is experiencing a $6 billion decline in remittances in the last year, which people are obviously pointing to, wait a minute, did they switch to Bitcoin? Right, so the timing of this, and you think about Cash App and Jack Dorsey's plans to do the same thing. I think if the timing of DM could be also consequential, because particularly Nigeria, the biggest market, is going through a huge upheaval in fintech, and governments trying to regulate the fintechs. But also, it's become clear that Nigerians are choosing something else now, right? And Bitcoin might be the current winner there, but will Facebook's currency be accepted, particularly given that Nigerians use WhatsApp and Instagram very heavily? And of course, there's a whole social commerce angle as well to add on top of that if they succeed.
Yeah, and you bring
Tyler.
Yes, go ahead, Ame.
Oh, I was just going to say it's very interesting what Mbwana and Messi are saying, because, I mean, even from what Jack Dorsey stated on a stage in Bitcoin conference back a few months ago, he's already been, and I remember I told you I had like a little conversation with the gentleman who's Akon's manager, like one of the guys that's connected to Akon. And he also was flying to meet Jack Dorsey in Costa Rica in the summer. So I just believe that there is already entry into Africa, as Mbwana is saying, of Bitcoin cryptocurrency, and I think Facebook will have a hard time in hell getting in there, because I just think for what the whole standings of Facebook are and how they're being, I think Africa is not a stupid continent. I think they're really viewing what's happening in the United States, and they're like, nope, not in our countries. And I just have a feeling they're going to put a stop to it, like not necessarily so. In a diplomatic way, it'll probably be done, of course, but I do agree with Messi and Mbwana because they're there. But I also know that Jack and his counterpart have already said they're going to Africa too. So I think that this Square, this Bitcoin, this Lightning Network, this wallet he's working on, I think he already has intentions of getting into Africa, and I think he's doing it quietly, Tyler. I don't think he's talking about it like Facebook is advertising it. I think that Jack's already doing this behind the scenes.
Yeah.
This is Michelle speaking. I don't know if I can just add my 2 cents here.
Do.
I feel like a few things might be conflated here. So I do understand that the Blue app may have some digital tax challenges in Ethiopia, but wherever we referring to transaction, it's more within the messaging environment, and usually those government don't look at the family of apps. They may just want to ban the Blue app because that's where there's the sort of freedom of speech happening. And on the fact that I also want to say that we just need to first look at what we're trying to solve with that. It's more facilitating transaction in a seamless way at the lowest cost possible. So I think that's a very solid selling point for those emerging markets. So I don't think it's really about Bitcoin, no Bitcoin. It's more what do we solve for this population as of today. So
and
that's
Facebook, no doubt, they are masters at making things easy for everyone to use. I mean, that's what Facebook is. It's a platform. They made it easy for everyone to make a profile of themselves on the internet. other people tried it. Facebook made it far easier, and that's why Facebook ended up winning that.
Yeah, and just the last thing quickly on that, I guess if I'm a Nigerian and I want to send $10 over WhatsApp and it takes a second, I don't think I'm going to over engineer Bitcoin or, the whole crypto aspect of it. So,
Well, there's even
yeah, I
more.
think it makes it.
Yeah, I've seen within Facebook lately, they're encouraging people to tip video, like you can buy coins inside of Facebook. That's what they're calling them, and give a coin to. I was watching a video by a content producer that I like, and it encouraged me to give them like a tip. But the tip was in these Facebook coins, but I had to pay $1, and it gave me 100 coins or something like that, and I could tip these coins. I was like, oh, this is going to get really interesting, because this could be a wallet tied to a fiat. It could be a stable coinish thing, but they could really simplify it, almost make it feel like a virtual currency, although it's not a virtual currency. It's pegged to an actual currency. And that gets really, 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 really interesting, especially in places where Facebook has it, as we've heard, it is unseparatable from the concept of the internet itself, where there's the Philippines and in Indonesia, I believe most notably, is where people use almost Facebook exclusively as their internet. Like, they're not using anything except Facebook. And the reason for that is because Facebook is covering the data costs for them. And so they, if you want to use all the other apps, you have to pay for internet access, like most countries do. You pay, a package for a certain number of data, megabytes or gigabytes. But Facebook, you don't. Facebook, you just start using the app. They pay for its own data, and that's why Facebook has become the actual internet in some places. And in those places, you can imagine how having a digital currency that has incredibly small fees, if any at all, this could be very powerful in those places for sure, and very useful. But in you're right. I think Amazed totally right. If you follow Jack Dorsey very closely, as her and I do, if you follow him really closely, you realize he's very focused on Africa, like super crazy hot focused on Africa. And he really believes Bitcoin in Africa is like, it seems pretty clear that he even feels like those two align really well. And it seems like he's has a strong particular interest in the way that the U.S. is not, maybe it's like the fact that Nigeria is the second largest holder of cryptos and user of cryptos, and like he really understands, like his approach to this. And some, I believe it was Ken or somebody, made the great point that both these companies are both really clearly revving the engines quite strongly at the moment, in terms of really wanting to make the rubber hit the road and really start doing some stuff, like enough foreplay on all of this.
And just quickly on that, Tyler, I just wanted to say what's interesting is that they are actually all interested in Africa, because that's where you have the largest percentage of unbanked globally. So there's a real existing problem that they're all trying to solve when it comes to fintech. So
it solves a real it solves a real issue.
Tyler.
On top of that, actually, also, even the data that they were saying last year, the digital money transfer was the highest in Africa. So because of the remittances and other things, there is a ton of money coming into the continent every single year. But what's interesting to me is that even Dorsey, who made his home or presence in Africa, in Ghana, is the government taking control and coming up with their own digital currency. ECD, I think they called it a few months back, and no one else is allowed to do anything in the private sector. So the central government, the Central Bank of Ghana, is experimenting with that, and then they are trying to be the very first one. I think maybe even in September that they will be rolling out and trying to see. So any transaction that's going to be in cryptocurrency is going to be controlled by government. So it's interesting how he's trying to tap into that and made his own presence in Africa and Ghana.
So then, yes.
Tyler? Oh, I was just going to share something because something just struck me when you started talking about like Facebook is like the internet for some countries and stuff. But I also am having some eerily weird feelings that this is reminiscent of the time when AOL started to see its decline. Remember how AOL saw its decline? Like AOL was super, super popular. Everyone loved it. Then people started calling it AOL. And then like after a while, and now we've just aged ourselves, but after a while you started to see that no, even that leader in the space was knocked off its pedestal. So I think that it's a little bit in some ways naive to think that Facebook cannot suffer that same fate. Maybe not right away, but it can happen because people are iterating new innovative things and new innovative positions, and like we've been talking about Starlink and all this other great and wonderful stuff that could possibly help them get internet access in different parts of the world. And you talked about the tie lines that are being dropped in the oceans by certain countries. I just think that at what point does it become something of a trajectory of AOL, where does Facebook have the capacity to go into those areas of cabling, fiber optics, that depth of that expertise? Because I think that's where that's a similar thing that happened with AOL. They started to want to go into everything. And I remember this because I worked for Sullivan and Cromwell, and I was on their help desk for level 2, level 3 support when they were defending that Netscape browser issue, blah, 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 that all happened in the late 90s. And I just feel like AOL had a heyday as well. AOL was really like all over in everyone's home, everywhere. But to the point of it being inside the Messenger app, I also think Messenger being a separate piece, even though it's inside the suite of the Facebook products, and it's seamless to some degree, it's also still a Messenger app as well inside. And I think that the privacy or the laws that regarding people's data, because we're already seeing it here in Netherlands. And I think over the weekend there was an article about Apple and Facebook getting hit heavily by the EU. So I'm just saying, like, I think that I'm just suspicious that at some point there is the room for other people stepping in, especially if they're innovating and pivoting faster and they're bringing more newness to the space and they're cutting out more of the fat of production. I don't know if that's clear, but the fat of production. Like if they make it more seamless for people, yes, that's great. But if they're still hands taking money, then that's not really making it seamless for everyone. That's still another layer or two going in there to help facilitate that process. And I have a dear friend here in Holland who works legal for Facebook with the EU. And I know he's been super busy because he's fighting heavily in the EU to protect some of the things that Facebook is embarking on. And it's a challenge because they're stepping their toes into areas that are tricky, like finance, like payments, remittance, the ability to transfer money. And this is also the same thing that's happening, as Alexandra and a few others were talking last night with NFT space. Same thing's happening with NFT space. At some point, the NFTs are going to be looked at as an asset. At some point, they're going to have to be taxed, or they're going to have to look at that as a possibility to hiding money. They're going to look at it. They're just not moving quick enough to look at it, but they will be looking at it. And I think that's where once those people step in, that are the regulators, it'll be hard to go up against them because they have the expertise.
Just quickly, Tyler, I know you want to move on, but I just kind of wanted to bring 2 points here. I think it's pretty interesting, and I'm not saying it from a biased perspective, but I think it also helps to just clarify things. It sounds to me like you're not really differentiating Facebook, the newsfeed, the Blue app, to WhatsApp, which is a complete different use case in those countries. And I would not necessarily compare WhatsApp to AOL. So yeah, that might not be the same thing. And in terms of connecting like emerging markets, that's something the company is already doing with those subsea cables and so on. And I'm not saying, I just kind of want to use this opportunity to clarify things and maybe educate people to some degree. And when it comes to EPD and the European laws, all tech companies are busy with that at the moment. So, but I mean, I don't think we're against regulation, but I just think it helps just being consistent when we, and also doing maybe a little bit of homework when we kind of have such strong opinion on these things.
One other interesting thing nobody's mentioned, sorry to cut you off, Michelle, which is because Facebook is clearly super gung-ho on the metaverse, which thank God they are. They're making and this whole new workspaces announcement. I mean, that's a I don't want to say it's a gift to society, but I mean it's certainly like I'm it kind of is. I mean, holy cow, that could be incredibly useful to everybody who has Oculus as a replacement for needing to fly in for meetings and enable, you know, people being able to work remotely, and it's fantastic. And what will the currency of the metaverse be exactly if Facebook is, a real leading player in the metaverse in VR? We're going to need payments in VR, and Facebook has their digital payment solution. So this is not something to be taken lightly. This could be, Oculus really is clearly the leader at the moment in VR, and it doesn't seem like anyone's even, really has a strong argument for why they will surpass Oculus in the near future. And this could get that just is a really compelling, and it's not, no one's really bringing this up yet, the whole commerce side of VR, and of course it will be based on the platform. Of course Facebook's going to be promoting their digital wallet as part of Oculus. We just that's just a safe assumption. I mean, why wouldn't they? So
and just just to quickly finish, and then I just wrap up. But I just wanted to say that as much as we dislike Facebook as a company, it just helps to be objective and looking into different use cases, So
okay, yeah, you're right. I do want to.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to add one more
Last
thing,
word,
Tyler.
Mabana, go ahead.
This is, yeah, and this is to defend Facebook and kind of be on the bright side. Like, they have been at this for a while. Like David Marcus, I do respect. He came from PayPal, is obviously been a Facebook for a while with Messenger. So I do have faith that if they've been thinking about this for a long time and have tried different things, that they could do well here. The thing that I think that they should be obviously conscious of is, particularly Nigeria, like, the naira is under attack. I feel like their local currency is really under attack, and the elections are coming up in a year or two, and the youth are really unemployed and wanting to earn hard currencies. But at the same time, you also have to factor in the KYC money laundering aspects of any emerging market. So if Facebook actually is really smart and has thought about this, they could factor all on this. I know they have their own currency, but if they complied and helped the government, particularly with making sure that they comply with the KYC money laundering rules, and they support the naira, like for example, providing clean on and off ramps for the naira, and also all the user experience aspects of WhatsApp and Messenger, as Michelle was saying, is like that could actually be compelling, right? I mean, obviously Jack Dorsey's going to do the same thing, but I'm hoping that DM, when it launches with their wallet, will be the cleanest, easiest way for a young Nigerian to earn foreign currency. And I believe the DM currency is tied to the dollar. But in addition, if they make it easy for Nigeria to at least support their local currency, naira, then actually it's actually more the issue of the rogue fintechs are not doing this, right? We're seeing record number of Nigerians opening foreign bank accounts, and that's probably not really pleasing the Central Bank of Nigeria. But if Facebook helped millions of people comply, they could really win here.
You bring up a great point, which is a lot of the world would prefer to be using U.S. dollars, and if this currency is a U.S. dollar stable coin, especially they're in a place where their own currency is really hurting. I mean, look, what about Lebanon? What if the Lebanese had this easy way to get into this even kind of stable coinish? Wow, that could have been really interesting. Anyway, the next biggest headline at the moment is about the OnlyFans fiasco, and now it's being the headline says OnlyFans is banning sexually explicit content because the over on Friday, one of the biggest headlines was OnlyFans is now going to ban sexually explicit content starting October 1st. Now the headlines are reading OnlyFans is banning sexually explicit content because of new MasterCard rules, making hosting such content prohibitively expensive, and other people are coming out with variations on this. OnlyFans shows Visa and MasterCard are choke points of online speech, according to protocol, where it says, and I'll tweet this one out for those who want to read it at the Tech News Twitter account, TNATW, as we always do. And this one from protocol says, who gets to decide what stays and goes on the internet? It's the prevailing question for tech platforms today. Should it be Facebook, Google, the government, users themselves? In one case of OnlyFans, an online platform that caters to adult content, the answer as to who's calling the shots appears to be Visa and MasterCard. On Thursday, OnlyFans made a surprising announcement that beginning October, they would ban all sexually explicit content from its platform following requests for our banking partners and payout providers. The news created an uproar among content creators who rely on the site for income, and also the people who are subscribers. Everyone was caught off guard. Now, those creators and others are placing the blame squarely on credit card companies that have begun taking an increasingly hardline stance against sites that host adult content and the banks that process their payments. These companies, they argue, have far too much power to influence online content, and they're flexing that power in ways that have dangerous consequences for content creators and sex workers. Visa and MasterCard have a solid hold on the credit card industry in the U.S. According to, in 2018, nearly half of Americans had a Visa card, while nearly 40% had MasterCard. And while many will blame OnlyFans for sacrificing sex workers in pursuit of investment capital and mainstream recognition, we need to be frank about where the true fault lies. With the banks and the credit card companies like MasterCard, who have refused to stand up to a misguided and ill-intentioned evangelical war on porn. The Free Speech Coalition, a trade association for the adult entertainment industry, said in a statement, companies like MasterCard are now accomplices in the disenfranchisement of millions of sex workers, complicit in pushing workers away from independence into potentially more dangerous and exploitative conditions.
Tyler, as I mentioned the last time on this story, and specifically in regards to OnlyFans, they wanted to go public through a SPAC, and the issue with the MasterCard and all of that was more the fact that anything with porn, and MasterCard and Visa still process a lot of porn stuff, is that they get a lot of chargebacks. The customers call up and legitimately or not, or complain, you know? And so that was the
this is a great point. So it's not that they actually are taking a moral position on this. It's a financial position, which is porn site subscribers always end up consuming the goods and then calling up and saying, wasn't me. That wasn't my credit card.
Hi, I'm Chris's wife. I'm trying to figure out what this
charge is for.
Charges. Yeah. It says only fans.
Right.
Chris,
the company that
what's
gets
going on
stuck
here?
when they do a chargeback would be OnlyFans. And so basically investors, people who were going to invest in the OnlyFans IPO, now thought it was like they thought it was a bit more risky.
What happened to the daycare money, Chris?
Yeah, so this is just a really interesting point that it's the site is saying, and this quote from the all of the porn site association is saying that Microsoft MasterCard's taking a moral position when it's really just there understandably there probably is just a wild amount of chargebacks on porn sites, and that's why they don't want nothing to do with them. Okay. So the next big headline, the biggest headline after that, we've covered about the first 5 or 6. The next is game developers across the industry describe the complexity of making what seem like simple things in games, from doors to objects, interact, and more. Game devs of all sizes and scopes respond to the question, what is a thing in a video game that seems simple but is actually extremely hard to make? And apparently doors are very tricky. That's why you don't see a whole lot of doors in video games. Anyway, we'll pass on that one. The next biggest one is an interview with Unreal Engine's Mark Petit on his view of the metaverse as an immersive version of the internet, the need to have open standards for it, and more. And Unreal Engine is one of the most important platforms for developing the metaverse. It's the same platform that people use to develop video games, and there is a comparison to be made between video games and the metaverse, because in the same way that you kind of live in the video game will be living in the metaverse, although the characters that you engage with will be, real characters. And so if to help people understand the metaverse, I guess video games are an apt first point of reference, and Unreal Engine is the platform that kind of is leading in this space. And so there's this interview with one of their key people, which I will tweet out now for those who want to do the deep dive on that one. And then the next biggest article is an interview with Matt Mullenweg from the founder of WordPress about their recent funding news, which outlined a $288 million primary round, buybacks, and internal liquidity market for staff. And so it's an interview with Matt Mullenweg, and who I can't speak highly enough about. He's just an absolute sweetheart of a guy. And he's really about the open web, perhaps more than anyone, because the people are now starting to understand that Twitter controls your data. You don't really. Google kind of controls your data. Facebook controls the data of the things you do on Facebook. And these are centralized walled gardens where what you do inside of their walled garden belongs to them, not really to you. So WordPress is actually very different. You run it on your servers. All data is owned by you. It's your walled garden. Anything that happens on your WordPress blog belongs to you. So it's the open architecture of the internet, like RSS feeds and email. Email is an open thing that nobody owns. Email, nobody owns RSS feeds, and so WordPress has always been trying to kind of fight the good fight and empower people. For example, if you were to build an email list, if you had your own blog and you're collecting your emails, you own those emails. And then when you other platforms, for example, meetup.com, you have people who follow your events on meetup.com, or even Clubhouse, people who follow you here. That stays in Clubhouse. There's not really a convenient built-in aspect that allows you to export, your club followers or the people who follow you. It's just one of the things that Matt has been very strong proponent and advocate of, educating people around the whole point of owning your audiences, and that's going to become one of the main important realizations that everyone wakes up to now that we're going into social commerce. Because there was a brilliant blog post, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. This lady Lynn made this really interesting point that the social commerce might become a little too similar to the gig economy, because in the gig economy, the platforms kind of own all of the data. Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and Instacart, if you're working for them on their platforms, they own all the data. You're just kind of a human robot. You don't really own anything in that ecosystem of the gig economy. And when we go to the social commerce on the social media platforms, I just got done saying that these social media platforms are walled gardens. They're going to own all the data, just like Uber and Lyft did. So you're going to be selling stuff in these walled gardens, but you're not going to own the customer. The platform is. Where in normal e-commerce, if it's your website, you own the relationship with the customer, but in social commerce, you will not. And that's why this whole concept of owning your customer, what OYC is going to become a real word. I'm just coining the term right now, OYC. Maybe someone else has before, but that concept is going to get really big in the very near future when everyone is selling everything on TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and Tinder and everywhere. Everyone's going to become understand fundamentally. Imagine building a store on a brick and mortar store in some city, and everyone who comes in and out of your shop, you don't own that customer. Somebody else does. That's what's going to happen in social commerce. You're not going to own those transactions. You're just enabling
But
those transactions.
Tyler, it's already happening with Amazon and eBay And I used to have a WordPress account. I had a blog on WordPress, and the reason why these walled gardens, a lot of people choose them, is because they're like almost like a little bit idiot proof, and they're just easier to use than WordPress.
Yeah, it's exactly the issue. Is they make it so easy, and you don't realize what you're giving up in exchange for that simplicity is ownership of the whole thing. You know, you're able to enact in their store, but you don't have your. It's not your store. They own it. You're a store in their market. It's not your market. You don't own the transactions. You don't own the customer. You don't own the data. So, but that's why I'm just ranting a bit on this issue, because it's going to become really important in the near future as social commerce comes to America, and as it's starting to happen. And Matt Mullenweg and WordPress have been kind of fighting the good fight on enabling people to own their own stuff, their own email lists, their own interactions with folks. So anyway, the next big,
as you know, there's
And
a lot of vendors on Amazon that have their own websites and everything, but they're almost like compelled because of the way customers behave. They're compelled to also sell through Amazon, and then Amazon does stuff for them. They inventory the stuff and whatever. But I mean, even though they have their own websites, they still sell on Amazon.
yeah.
And just quickly on that, Tyler, I think you actually making a really good point in the sense that it will be even more complex for small and medium enterprises moving forward with all this data regulation happening. It will actually weaken them, and they will be more dependent on the largest players. Because if you have your own website but you can't really leverage the data in a powerful way, it's almost like you can't really leverage that to drive growth. So I think it will be more challenging than ever.
So the next biggest headline at the moment is from CNBC, America's leading finance public, network. And it says a look at Afghanistan's burgeoning crypto scene, which Chain Analysis ranked 20th globally in overall crypto adoption in 2021 after ranking among lowest last year. For many Afghans, this week has laid bare the worst case scenario for a country running on legacy financial rails, and huge opportunity for crypto there in Afghanistan, because it's in a very tumultuous moment there with regard to the central bank and the Taliban. And hopefully crypto folks are taking advantage of a golden opportunity there, and Lebanon as well. It's just wild times in that part of the world. The next big one, it says global cryptocurrency adoption grew 881% year over year, led by Vietnam very strongly, like double anywhere else. Like Vietnam exploded in cryptocurrency this year, more than anywhere else by a long margin. And then India, and then Pakistan, which is next door to Afghanistan. And now Afghanistan looks like it likely, in a percentage basis, will have the biggest boom for the next many months, if unless things calm down and get very clear very quickly. So the next big article is from BuzzFeed. The headline reads, critics fear the new IT rules in India, where the internet is dominated by U.S. digital platforms, give the government even more power to stomp out dissent. This is an issue we've been talking about almost every day for months here in Tech News Around the World. So it's interesting to finally see a quote-unquote mainstream publication take this on. It says, long viewed as the world's biggest market for the next billion users, India is fast becoming Silicon Valley's biggest headache. As big tech thought it had a billion users in the bag, now it might be forced to make hard choices to get them, because the government doesn't want to make it easy for these big American tech companies to take over their market. They want their own domestic unicorns. We've been saying this repeatedly. And so the article reads, for more than 30 years, they turned it into an... I hate it when tech journalists do this. It's a story about a guy named Manjul who goes by his first name only, has skewered leaders from every Indian government in political cartoons, slashed across the country's biggest news publications in recent years on social media. But until June, no one had ever threatened him, the titan of editorial cartooning. So when he saw an email from Twitter's legal department in his inbox in June, he was surprised. I thought it was a prank, but it wasn't. The email said the company had received a legal order from Indian law enforcement against him, claiming that his Twitter account, which in spring had been full of satirical cartoons featuring Indian Prime Minister Modi's disastrous handling of the country's coronavirus pandemic, had violated India's laws. Twitter explained that it hadn't complied with the order and advised the cartoonist that he should take legal counsel to challenge it in court, seek help from civil society organizations, delete his tweets, or find some other resolution. We understand that receiving this type of notice can be an unsettling experience. The cartoonist told BuzzFeed News he had found the email disturbing. I got very upset and angry. He said, no one told me what laws I violated. Everybody has a political opinion in this country. I'm not abusing the government. When he tweeted a screenshot of the email to his more than 200,000 followers, he wrote, "Hail the Modi government" in Hindi. And almost immediately, the Indian internet exploded. The move to silence him was seen by many as yet another step in India's increasingly authoritarian government to clamp down on dissent. For months, the country's ruling party, led by Modi, a nationalist autocrat accused of reshaping India's secular ethos into a Hindu state, had been hard at work trying to quell an upswell of criticism on social media after deadly second wave of the pandemic killed thousands and protests from millions of farmers against new agricultural laws rocked the nation. But it wasn't until last week of May that things came to a head. From May 26, Indian government armed itself with policies that empowered it to crack down on virtually all major digital platforms, social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, messaging apps like WhatsApp, streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and news websites. Among the new rules, which were first proposed in February, was one that requires social media platforms and streaming services to hire additional staff to redress grievances filed by Indians offered by certain content, and to employ full-time officers with law enforcement agencies around the clock. The immediate consequences for not complying with these rules can be severe. Companies can be slapped with heavy fines. Local staffers can be jailed. And the broader consequences could be worse, losing protection from being held liable for content that people post, which could open companies up to all kinds of lawsuits. And indeed, this is all happening. And interesting to see BuzzFeed now getting this all out there. But the headline of critics fear that the new rules in India, where the internet is dominated by U.S. platforms, gives governments more power to stomp out dissent. Yeah, of course they do. That's the whole point of them. So big tech's got his hand full there. The next headline is a bug in Razer's Synapse software, which Windows fetches and installs when Razer accessory is plugged in, lets anyone with a Razer mouse gain admin privileges. So don't use Razer's mouses because it enables a backdoor for people to take over your computer. The next one from CNBC, PayPal will launch its cryptocurrency service in the UK this week. The product's first international expansion since it debuted in the US in 2020. San Francisco Chronicle has a profile of the Solidarity Fund, which donated $112,000 to 44 tech workers with the goal of supporting labor organizing efforts. That's interesting. Big tech company employees. Clearly, unions are trying to unionize tech in the Bay Area. That's what's going on there, and that's really interesting to watch. And that's what that's going to do is basically just force the continuing of the globalization of the workforce for tech companies based in the Bay Area. So they're just going to say, oh, you're trying to unionize our employees in the Bay Area at our HQ? Yeah, fuck it. There's no more HQ. We're decentralized. Everyone work everywhere. They would much prefer that than to see their local San Francisco-based HQ centralized teams become unionized, which is a huge threat to them. The tech companies would perceive that as a huge threat. So to combat that, forget it. We don't have an office. We have an office, but just for our core, C-suite here in San Francisco. Everyone else is remote, work from home, work from wherever. Good luck trying to unionize them when everyone's working remote and globally. That's what's going to happen. So anyway, and the next one's from the Wall Street Journal. Sources detail how Jack Ma's relationship with China's leadership soured as he failed to keep up with Beijing's shifting views and tuned out warnings for years. And this is one of the biggest stories in tech of the past many years. And this was the official beginning of China's crackdown on tech, which now everyone's realizing. It all really started. Everyone who tracks this points back to January, February, when Jack Ma, kind of the Elon Musk or the Jeff Bezos of, more appropriately, the Jeff Bezos of China, who his company Alibaba is very much like the Amazon of Asia. And one of the wealthiest people in Asia and one of the most powerful platforms in Asia was Alibaba. And one of the things they had was the Alipay, which is an app that nearly everyone in Asia is using to pay for stuff. And then they were going to IPO Alipay, or the company behind Alipay called Ant Financial. And at the last minute, the CCP says, no, you're not going to IPO. And by the way, you need to go into hiding, and we're taking it over. It's just been a big snowball ever since. But this Wall Street Journal article says brainy and ambitious Jack Ma built one of China's largest businesses empires from scratch, creating billions of dollars in wealth and introducing digital innovations to hundreds of millions of people. He wasn't China's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates. He was their peer. Now he has disappeared almost entirely from public view, in part because of the same go for broke drive he shared with other 21st century tech titans. Mr. Ma failed to keep pace with Beijing's shifting views and lost an appreciation for the risks of falling out of step. According to people who know him, he tuned out warnings for years. They said he behaved too much like an American entrepreneur. Mr. Ma's exit from the world stage followed a typically frank speech in October when he criticized Chinese regulators for stifling financial innovation. Yep, everyone points to that precise interview. And Mr. Xi personally intervened days later to block the record $34 billion plus initial public offering of Ant Financial, Mr. Ma's financial tech company. Since then, Ant has been forced to restructure its business, leaving the company's employees and investors in limbo. Beijing has cracked down on China's private sector, issuing fines and initiating probes meant to force Mr. Ma's companies, as well as such firms as ride-hailing giant Didi and TikTok, to adhere more closely to the state's interests. The companies, holding troves of capital and user data, had grown too expansive for the government to control. And indeed, it seems like the government was kind of concerned, and even I might even say worried, that these tech companies had way too much powerful data and control. And anyway, it's a real long story about Jack Ma in China, who's now reportedly doing lots of finger paintings quietly in the corner somewhere in the beautiful mountains of China. So wild story indeed. And he's not the only one. So same with one of the co-founders of other of China's very biggest tech companies have now mysteriously resigned from their roles as the leaders of the biggest Chinese tech companies, and they're now doing lots of finger painting with their friend Jack Ma in the corner of a Starbucks somewhere.
No wonder they are doing NFT on Alibaba now.
Yeah. Well, so Jack can sell his finger paintings? Yeah. And Alibaba did announce last week that they're now going into NFTs. Maybe so Jack can sell his finger paintings as NFTs.
No, so they get the stock back up, because if you look at the stock, it's been crushed.
Yeah. So the next big story is from Bloomberg about the CEO of South Korea's online retail giant Coupang is facing renewed criticism about working conditions after a fire damaged one of its main fulfillment centers. New Yorker has a profile on Cerebras, which made the world's largest chip by using a wafer-scale approach that offers one possibility for AI chips to keep up with Moore's law. and Google's dismantling its Google Health division, although we have an update on that we'll get to in a minute. And those are the most popular headlines that people are sharing at the moment. Those are not the most interesting headlines. Those are the boring headlines that are the most popular, that, your cousins and coworkers who are not legitimate geeks are now learning about, that we've discussed a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago in the case of the Jack Ma story. And the articles that we are talking about now, we're going to get into now. And these are the interesting articles that we, as the geeks of the world, have found and have shared with each other via Twitter by very simply, and you can do it too, anyone can do it, simply when you find an article you think we should discuss, tweet it from your own Twitter account, but include our Twitter handle, which is TNATW. We will see it. And boy, do we get a lot of tweets that people are sharing, and most of the people on stage and a whole lot of people in the audience are sharing these tweets, and thank you all for doing that. And now we're going to go through the most interesting tweets, and this is a truly amazing co-creation effort. And we're not only going to we've crowdsourced this amongst the geeks of the world to find the most interesting stories, but now we get to discuss them as a group of international geeks, and it's a really fun thing that is kind of unique to tech news around the world here. So here we go. The first real.
So for the benefit of those people who are new to this room, teach them how to tweet it.
Yeah, I did. I said tweet it from your account and use our Twitter account, TNATW. And now I'm going to read the tweets that people have tweeted, and I'm going to retweet their tweets to our Twitter account. And as we talk about these next 50 headlines that I've picked out of people over the past 24 hours, I'm going to tweet them from our Twitter account, TNATW. I'm going to retweet their tweet. And so that you can click on the article and read it and save it and share it and we'll do whatever you want to do with it. So here we go. And these are in no particular order, very, very random order indeed. The first one that comes up here is from Craig Nielsen in the audience here from the Wall Street Journal. Money managers race to launch first U.S. Bitcoin ETF after the SEC gives a signal that they're kind of okay with this. And this would be huge for Bitcoin if you removed all the friction of actually buying Bitcoins and created a ETF that was tied to Bitcoin so that you could essentially trade in Bitcoins as a stock, and you just buy.
No, Tyler, this is the point I tried to make them the last time. They're using futures. It's not going to work stock ETF. And therefore, because they're using futures, and I'm not going to get into the explanation unless you want me to, what will very likely happen, because they've been gold ETFs, not gold, oil, oil and natural gas that have also used futures, is that because they use futures and they have to roll the futures, the very often the ETF will price differently than the spot market or whatever it's supposed to track. So if all of a sudden there's a what's called contango, which which means that the curve gets elevated, all of a sudden, even if Bitcoin's going up on a Bitcoin ETF based on futures, the value of your ETF can actually go down, and that's happened with other ETFs that have been tied to like natural gas and oil that use futures. The gold and silver ETFs basically have a little bit of futures, but they actually own the bullion, and it's very different. So they can track the thing closer to the spot price, and it's a really important distinction.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the next one is from Heyman via Bloomberg. The China regulator halts 42 IPOs on probe of broker law firm. China's market regulator halted 42 IPOs in Shanghai and Shenzhen after starting a probe into an investment bank and a law firm. So a whole lot of IPOs to be halting. China's market regulator halted 42 IPOs after Jesus, Bloomberg, what's wrong with your webpage? Yeah, looking into an investment bank, a law firm, and other parties involved in the deals. The news of the shelved IPOs was reported by Shanghai Security News, which cited disclosures by the exchanges and company filings. CSRC probing China Dragon Securities law firm Tianyuan halts come amid broker crackdown on private sector by Beijing. Okay. So the next one is, thank you for that one, Heyman. The next one I'm tweeting out here is from Poppy via Reuters, that world leaders out of excuses on climate change. Thunberg youth activists say the world's children cannot afford more empty promises at this year's United Nations Climate Change Conference, otherwise known as COP26, which will be gathering very soon in, somebody has to remind me where they're meeting this time, in Glasgow, in Scotland. And due to the focus of all the world leaders meeting yet again, as they do once a year, around this issue of climate change, Greta Thunberg, or as Thunberg, as it's pronounced in Swedish, is, God bless her, as you know, the world's youth are, rising up to make their voices heard and anxiety felt. And the COP26 is the biggest gathering of the world's leaders on this issue. And she normally speaks at it. It's confirmed that she'll speak there again. And we will await to hear her, heartfelt, rant. I mean that affectionately, to make the world leaders wake up. And the question is the 50th time a charm? I don't know that it will be. I think she's correctly no longer put any faith in world leaders to respond to the pleas of and protests of tens of thousands of kids marching through the streets of Europe, as they do very regularly. And it doesn't seem to have much notable impact. So, but yet they persist, because they don't yet really have any other call to action other than to hold protest signs and, protest in the streets. So hopefully we can convert a lot of that anxiety into actions, like planting trees and things. I'm not sure what, we'll see. The world's children cannot afford more empty promises at this year's UN Climate Change Conference, COP26. Youth activists, including Greta Thunberg, said after a UN report found virtually no child will escape the impact of global warming. So thank you for that one, Poppy. The next one from Professor Asif from Reuters, that Israel finds COVID-19 vaccine booster significantly lowers infection risk. So a third shot of Pfizer, where Israelis almost exclusively used Pfizer in a big collaboration with Pfizer, and a third dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine has significantly improved protection from infection and serious illness amongst people aged 60 and older in Israel. It is now being reported by Reuters. The next one's from Jim Friedlich. My apologies for butchering your last name, Jim. It's from the Inquirer. It says, a federal lifeline for local news. Op-ed from today's Philly Inquirer says, a federal lifeline for local news now before Congress, the Local Journalism Sustainability Act, would offer financial support to newsrooms and publications to keep them alive. Because these journalists at the Philadelphia Inquirer and others, they're not sustainably, economically, they're dying. All the publications are dying. And
has no shot of passing, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead and speak to that if you can. Why won't it pass?
Well, because you have the government then basically, effectively owning indirect. I mean, you provide, what the media, which is supposed to be independent and separate. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, there always has been tremendous congressional from Republicans about even funding the PBS, and they've held up budgets over PBS. So if they can't even agree on PBS, there's no way they're ever going to agree on this thing. And by the way, we're also facing a debt ceiling vote. We're going to hit the federal debt ceiling early in September. 46 of the 50 Republicans have already signed a letter saying that they won't approve the debt ceiling. So, I mean, there's so much other stuff that ties in there's like, just because someone introduces a bill doesn't mean it's going to pass. I mean, the reality is in our Congress, because of committee systems and everything, the highest probability of on any bill is that it won't pass. That's just the reality. It's very tough that actually gets
But
through.
what if they start writing more articles about how Amazon is not profitable? Maybe then they could they could stay in business if they just wrote 20 more articles about how Amazon itself is not profitable. Because can somebody help us understand why these newspapers, who themselves need financial support from the government to stay alive, feel it necessary to point out that Amazon's not profitable, despite the fact it's one of the world's most valuable companies?
Yeah, because newspapers have been closing for years. I mean, the newspapers have been in decline now for 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden, people about the last few surviving ones, close like tons. I mean, so it's almost like the horses that are already out of the barn. I'm sure someone's going to make that point also, and it must be somebody that's got some interest in this one particular newspaper in Philadelphia trying to save it, but nobody saved the other ones that all closed down. So it's the internet. It's the internet in general that killed the newspaper industry.
Yes, and maybe that has something to do with the fact of why they're so fond of writing articles critical of big tech and how Tesla's not profitable, Amazon's not profitable, despite the fact they're making, billions of dollars, $100 billion a quarter that they
Amazon now, by
huh?
the way. Amazon is
Yeah,
profitable now. They have
but they point out, they're very fond of pointing out how when they have a quarter where they actually have a loss, because heaven forbid they reinvest their earnings into more factories and autonomous systems that are going to bring us all of our orders autonomously. And it blows my mind that these journalists are so fucking stupid when it comes to business, that their own publications they're writing at are literally sinking into the ocean, and they feel compelled to not write that story. They've never written that story. I've never read a story of, oh, my publication I write at is a fucking economic tragedy and it's going to fall apart in the next 12 months, which they all are. Yet, let's write a story about how Amazon, one of the biggest financial successes the planet Earth has ever known, it had a losing quarter. They lost money this quarter. No, they didn't lose money. They're investing into their future growth. They're one of the fastest growing companies the planet has ever seen, and they feel compelled to invest the money they're making, the hundreds of billions of dollars they made in the past 3 months, into more factories to grow even fucking faster. You dumb fucking journalists, stop writing these stupid fucking articles. This is why you're dying. In part, I mean, it's also because you can't even figure out how to build a sustainable business in tech in 2021, which anyone with a half good fucking idea can go get venture funding right now. For any shit-brained idea, we'll get funding right now. You guys can't figure out how to keep yourselves alive, with a few notable exceptions. The media companies in Sweden, for example, Schibsted, has done a fantastic job starting a decade ago. They saw the writing on the wall. Schibsted owns all of the magazines and newspapers, and they started diversifying and started buying up all of these websites that were, like the eBays of Scandinavia. And now they're massive. They've done incredibly well. MTG, Modern Times Group, owns all of the TV stations in Scandinavia. Bonnier owns all the books. All of these media houses and publishers in Scandinavia, all digitized, diversified. MTG just bought up all of the biggest e-gaming platforms. They're booming. So America, media houses, publications, what is wrong with you that you allow these just absurdly embarrassing headlines to be written under the names of your publications? It's just so incredibly embarrassing. Save yourselves, guys.
And Tyler, just quickly on that, I think it's a great example, because I think Scandinavia is probably the only media ecosystem that embraced digital so quickly, and And the fact that they also created their own walled garden, because Chipset doesn't share data with Facebook and Google. So that also kind of gives them a solid position in that whole data ecosystem. So I think that's definitely a great example.
Okay, so here's
just to be
Messy.
sorry. No, just to be the devil advocate here, not defending
When you say the devil, you
the
mean
newspapers.
American media? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna just be contrarian to
Sure.
you.
Let's fight, Messy. Go ahead.
Yes, my 5 cents here is that I think the tech media, like Google News, for example, it just aggregates the great products of all these writers, right? They don't write themselves. They just aggregate all these news articles, and then they profile them as if we don't need to see the other ones. The same thing with the Yahoo and others. So I don't know. To me, it's a little bit of an iffy situation, right? Do they have to pay them for what work they are doing? And then maybe they would do a much better job, because I mean, like you said, they are dying because they are not getting paid in their digital product is not being paid. So like my husband every day says that I love it. I read Financial Times, the New York Times. I should subscribe and get these things. I don't want to read them for free, but we all read it for free because Google aggregates it or something like that. So I don't know. It is a murky situation. So
Yeah, but usually now, if you get something from the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, and they give you the little snippet, when you try to read the whole article, at some point you'll hit a paywall. They'll give you so many free articles, but you'll hit a paywall. And by the way, Tyler, I just looked it up because I used to cover this sector, but I wanted to get the right number. In the past 15 years, 2,000 American newspapers have closed. So the horse is out of the barn already. They're not going to save them at this point.
yeah, and I think one of the things actually I was listening to on CNN last weekend or something like that, some of even vaccination hesitant people have been saying that they want to hear it from their local newspapers. They don't want to hear it from the national, from CNN or Bloomberg or something like that, or New York even Times for that matter. What they say is like, they know the local writers, they are their neighbors, they are their uncles and things like that. So to me, the local newspaper closing down, like you said, in thousands, is a disservice to humanity and society, because I think a lot of people, like you say, Tyler, last week, I remember you were saying that 30% of the people who don't want to just deal with tech don't want to be having Amazon. So Amazon was trying to get into having their own stores because they want to get those 30%. So there are a lot of like those 30% locally living there and being hesitant about any scientific things, any other things, but they believe it when they hear it from their local reporters. So I think we need to find out as a society, if we want to have a better life, we need to find a way to support those, not just those big tags.
Okay.
Sorry,
no problem.
That's my
there
rant.
You go. That's why we're here. So the next one is from Faraz via Bloomberg that China hits COVID zero cases with month of draconian curbs. It's been just over a month, and China has once again squelched COVID-19, bringing its local cases down to zero. According to Bloomberg, local cases back to zero as China seeks to lock in safety. China returns as the biggest country posting zero COVID cases. This sounds really strange because it was just like on Friday they were reporting it had reached a new province. And there was like 40 new cases on Friday. So how did they just get it down to zero today? That's really weird.
I don't know, but I did meet with
when
my
is the
advisee
article?
I met with my advisee this morning, who's on the ground. And every week we talk about how things are in Thailand, how things are in China, and he said that things are going well in China now. So I'm not sure what they did, but that's the message that he shared with me 3 hours ago.
Well, this raises an interesting question. China fundamentally understands that to stop it, you have to control it geographically. So they find where it is, they isolate it, and then they freeze anyone going in or out of that geography. Thailand does that in a softer kind of way. China does it in a very concrete, clear, extreme way. And then after a month, It's gone. Okay, whole country's a green zone again. Everyone back to normal. Would I mean, how do people feel if the government were to take that approach in their country? China's basically never had COVID because when it pops up, they go so hardcore into controlling it geographically. They freeze, they isolate it, they find out where it is, they isolate it. Everyone in that region freezes the fuck down in your house for 3 weeks. Then it's gone. The country's open. They've had to do this a very few times because they act so quickly because they understand it's an absolute race to stop the spread geographically and control it geographically, freeze it in place wherever it is, and the rest of the place stays open while those places are frozen. And then everyone's open. Now they're back open, and now they'll be back open, and they're going to be very careful around the airports and their borders from stopping from going back in. They're not going to have COVID for another year. They might get a little.
And every time he would travel to a new city domestically, he would have to quarantine for 14 days. So it's not just about quarantining entering the country, but if he, every time he travels, he has to quarantine.
So here's my question: how do other places would not want the same to be done? You could just basically, no one has to worry about COVID at all, except for, these small pockets where it pops up, a few times a year. Hopefully, I don't know. It's kind of frustrating. So the next one is from Poppy from BBC. And the BBC is asking, Afghanistan, where will the refugees go? That's the headline. Thousands of people are it's not even thousands. It's going to be 1 million. Where will refugees go after, and by the way, 3 million went into Pakistan last time the Taliban took over. And they're still there, those 3 million. So it says thousands of people have begun scrambling to flee Afghanistan after the Taliban seized control almost 2 decades after they were ousted. When the Taliban were ousted. The surge in numbers trying to leave comes on top of 2.2 million refugees already in neighboring countries and 3.5 million people left homeless within Afghanistan's borders as a result of ongoing conflict and political instability. How many Afghans are leaving? At the moment, it's unclear. The Taliban control all the main land crossing points with Afghanistan's neighbors, and it shows a map. And the militants have said they do not want Afghans to leave the country. Reports suggest only traders or those with valid travel documents are being allowed to cross. The vast majority of Afghans are not able to leave the country through regular channels. A spokesperson for the UN High Commission for Refugees said on Friday, as of today, those who may be in danger have no clear way out. And there's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 border points between Iran, Pakistan, Turkmenistan. There's one in Uzbekistan, 2 in Tajikistan, 1, 2, 3 in Pakistan, 1, 2, 3, 4 with Iran. And yeah, I mean, where will they go? No one wants them. Pakistan's blocking their border. Iran's borders are relatively open. A bunch of them went up into Uzbek and Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. But more importantly, Pakistan doesn't want them to leave, and they're stopping people from leaving. But Pakistan really doesn't want them because Pakistan feels they already have too many from last time. The 2.2 million who came over last time are still there. So how many have fled in their homes? And it says thousands of Afghans were forced to leave their homes this year. It appears about 1 million already, according to this chart. Number of people displaced due to the conflict by month. So over the past 6 months, looks, close to 1 million. And neighboring countries took in the highest number of Afghans in 2020. Pakistan last year took another 1.5 million. Iran took nearly 1 million. Germany, 181,000. Turkey, 130,000. And then Austria. And keep that in mind because I have a headline coming up soon that now Austria, let me pull it up now. Why wait on this one? Austria, I'll find it. Austria's prime minister now saying, we're not taking any more. And they were number 5 globally in terms of taking refugees. They took in 46,000 last year, and now they're saying no more. Turkey doesn't want to take them either. They're protecting their border. Greece as well just secured their border, their land border with Turkey, precisely to stop this. And is it a coincidence that the EU is passing the burqa ban as we speak, which would effectively make it unhospitable for them to even come there? So, yeah, what are countries doing to help? Is this headline, and where are they going to go? And by the way, let's take this opportunity to raise the point of the next headline. Watch this. You think it's bad now? Hold that thought, my friends. You've seen nothing yet. You think a couple million people leaving Afghanistan's a problem? Hold that tiny little thought in your head, because you have seen nothing yet. Watch this next headline from CNN. The headline reads, I'm tweeting it right now. You can see it for yourself. The Middle East is running out of water. That's the actual headline from CNN. The ferries that once shuttled tourists to and from the little islands in Iran's Lake Urmia sit rusty. The ferries are sitting rusty on flat, dry land. The ferries that used to take people between islands are now sitting rusty on dry land, unable to move on what is rapidly becoming a salt plain, because the Middle East is running out of water. That's the headline from CNN. How does that relate to the Afghani refugees? Well, because you're soon going to have Iran refugees, because it's becoming uninhabitable. People would come here and swimming and blah, blah, blah. The Middle East is going to run out of water. I've been screaming this for months in this room. Google the words water stress map, and you will see the climate scientists are all unanimous in their agreement. The Middle East is going to run out of water. It's 55 million Muslims are going to have to relocate. Not 1.5 million Afghanis, 55 million Muslims. Where are they going to go? Just like the last headline read. The headline from the BBC is, where will the refugees go? And I'm saying, oh, we're just starting with this shitstorm. This is just chapter 1 of this apocalyptic tale. Because it's going to get a whole lot worse. 50 times worse. In the next 10 to 15 years.
Can I
Please
say
do.
something,
Sure.
Tyler? I don't want to be hugging the the mic today. I feel I am
No,
hugging.
don't think
Sorry.
twice about it.
You know, it just breaks my. It really does break my heart. I was a refugee in my teens, separated from my family for the first time because of civil war. I don't want to cry here, but you know, if Canada didn't give me a home and did my education, and I am who I am today in the tech room with a tech background, being a programmer, a gig, and all that, and privileged person now, having 3 residency where I can fly in and live anywhere I want to. It's because Canada gave me home. You know, we all are refugees, for God's sake. We all are immigrants, except maybe Ethiopia. You know, the oldest human being, 3 million years old, is from Ethiopia. So we all immigrated. It's just a matter of time. Einstein was an immigrant, you know, a refugee. And look what he contributed to the world. I think it's just it just breaks my heart that we are not finding a way to solve the problem and accept human beings as human beings and giving them home. Because if you look at the US, you know, the 55% of billion companies have immigrant in those companies. If you look at doctors, scientists who came and solved the COVID, most of them are immigrants. I was shocked how many doctors are from India that every day that we were seeing. It's just, I don't understand this. I don't know. I have to stop speaking, but I think it is very nice if we just all become human and look at humans looking. Nobody leaves their home just for the sake of living home. We all live because of something that's not livable where we live. So it would be nice if we give people home.
Yeah. So
Let's
what?
just
Yeah,
quick.
1 second, Carl. Welcome back, by the way. Here, I just thank you to Bibi who found the headline from Bloomberg. Austria's leader says he won't take refugees fleeing Afghanistan. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I was just going to say that line of being human is perfect. Absolutely, yes, we should. The problem is that one of the things that's never really often mentioned, because we're busy talking about how the rainforests are on fire and the waters are bleaching and the toxicity levels in coral reefs, etc., and the carbon dioxide in the air, is the fact that the ability to be human reduces. As in, when people are warm and muggy and the temperature's changing and the fuel prices are increasing and the water's, coming through not properly filtered or shutting down, and there are brownouts and whatnot, people's ability to remain human and think calmly changes drastically. And there's studies in, I think it was Mexico, where they mapped the crime rates and then they took the heat levels over a decade or so. And it was just like one had been copied from the other, because when the temperatures go up and everything becomes difficult, people become assholes. They're angry, they want to blame. And then that's multiplicative on the fact that we sort of act like sheep. So when you've got, millions of people who would normally think cogently and fairly in a humanitarian way, and then you put their country under stress, well, those 55 million individuals who are looking for a place are going to find significantly less places to run to.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest. No, I've not seen a headline yet. We just saw the two headlines next to each other, but I've not seen any headline yet that connects the two, which is the running out of water. The climate scientists already know it, but again, look at water stress maps and do yourself a little deep dive on that topic of where the water is disappearing from over the next 15 years. And water stress is defined as not having access to clean water. And that number is going to go from 15% of the planet doesn't have access to clean drinking water. It's going to go to 66% in the next 15 years. And it shows you where that's going to happen. And it's very important where that's going to happen. And if you're in the Arizona area, it's likely going to happen. Southern California is also where I'm from and where most of my childhood, family and friends are from. Will also be impacted. So this is a personal issue for me. I was living there myself until relatively recently, but I moved to a place that is, according to the future forecasts of water, is going to have more water, not less. And that was a headline we read on Friday, that the climate scientists are very clear. It's not that the water is disappearing from the planet. It's just reconcentrating. Other areas are going to get drier. Other places are going to get wetter. So you might want to take that into account when you're looking for your next home, or before. Even California is already becoming a bit of a sticky situation, and people might want to start thinking of being the first one out the door, because if you're the last one out, I imagine the real estate is going to get a bit peculiar. Ken?
Comment, and then I had a question for you. So my comment is, when I saw that article, because I also saw that article, is I took a look at that dry bit in the Middle East and said that could be like Lake Mead, which is now down to 30%. So you're right. But my question is, you made a comment on another room the other day about move closer to the equator because the water is going to. That's where the water will be. And I was just curious, because I actually then Googled a bunch of things I wanted to know, like where is Thailand in relation to the equator? But then but that was one. But then I said, where is Germany, which has all these floods relative to the equator? And it turns out even the most southern part of Germany is farther from the equator than Las Vegas. So can you explain that whole concept?
Yeah, that's just a really overly simplistic point that I was just trying to give people a concept as to where the water's going. You can much more articulately see where the water is going to go by doing. Here, I'll tweet one out right now. The mapping global water stress from Bloomberg image here. Let me tweet this so people can see this. And tweeting this, mapping global water stress, an online tool visualizes various unpleasant water scarce scenarios. And here's the Twitter account. So let me tweet this out from Bloomberg. There, it's tweeted. And this is a much more articulate map of the red zones are what you want to avoid. And the, light yellow zones is where you want to be. And look at that map. And by the way, population plays into it. But anyway, it's called the Water Risk Atlas. So Scandinavia, interestingly, a lot of America is going to be okay. A lot of Scandinavia is going to be okay. A lot of Africa is going to be okay. Southeast Asia is not bad at all. Thailand's great. But there's parts, when you see the dark red zones there, it kind of goes across, the Sahara, through Saudi Arabia, right through, the Middle East, through Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Central Asia, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Boy, it's rough. It's going to get real rough. And you look at that map and ask, where will those people go? But, I don't know what to say. My point about the equator is an oversimplification. You can see the equator line in the map that I just sent out, which goes just through the tip, right through the center of Africa, right through Indonesia, right through northern South America. It's all in the green zone. So I just use as an oversimplification for get people's heads around, where it's all. How as to highlight the point that the wet areas are going to get wetter and the dry areas are going to get drier. And weather extremism is another way to think of it. But anyway, so the next tweet that somebody sent in here is about we read on Friday that Google Health is shutting down, and now the headline says Google says health projects will continue even if Google Health, as an official arm of Google, is shutting down. Google Health will no longer exist, but its projects will continue under the company's research, search, and device divisions. So they don't want to scare people away completely. They got a bit of PR balancing act they got to do there. And then Shirok found this one, that 55% of traditional banking customers say that they regularly use fintech apps now. And that's going to go up to nearly 100%. And as that number increases, just like the newspapers, the traditional banking ecosystem is also threatened by digitalization, because the geeks have data. It's all about this data. Just as it threatens media and the newspapers, and they're getting crushed because they didn't figure out how to manage data, so too will the banks. That's how it works. So too will the healthcare industry, if eventually. So too will the education industry. Industries that don't figure out how to adopt tech and data will get crushed by those who do. It's as simple as that. So, as every geek knows, if you ever get into data, you understand how big of an asymmetrical advantage you have. Metaphorically, you have a machine gun in the age of butter knives. It's that much of an unfair advantage. So, hopefully they figure it out before it's too late. Which the media did not. So the next one is about a China. This is really interesting. About the robots are becoming a very big thing here in 2021. One need only look at Tesla's big announcement that they're planning their own humanoid robot for next year as evidence of that, where Elon Musk is even saying as soon as they launch these things, they're claiming next year that work will become optional. Human, laborious, boring work will become an option in our lifetimes. So we will need universal payment for people who choose not to work. So anyway, the headline here from Nikkei Japan, and by the way, Japan's been leading robots forever. they as a country, no one's been further ahead than Japan on robots, and especially culturally and technically, they just are now. Automation and robots is actually a huge thing in Japan. Not surprisingly, in part because their working age population is disappearing. The working age population of Japan is disappearing very quickly, faster than anywhere else on the planet. So perhaps not a coincidence that they are working to replace their humans. Their working aged humans are retiring and they're not being replaced. So how they're choosing to replace them is with robots. And that's why they're the world leader in robots, is one of the reasons. But this article from Nikkei Japan says Chinese robot makers battle Europe and Japan rivals on home turf, meaning in China. And they highlight, it says Chinese industrial robots still have catching up to do in terms of technology, but they are roughly 30% cheaper than Japanese and European counterparts. And ongoing Chinese manufacturers are set to exploit to gain ground in their home markets, according to Nikkei Japan. Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. And this is, again, where Sweden kind of leads outside of Japan with ABB as the world's leading robotic arm company. All of the car manufacturing is actually done with these ABB robotic arms. And these ABB robotic arms are now being used to make pizza and cafes for baristas, and they will soon be replacing everything. The reason you don't have these robotic arms, well, they're being used in big, expensive industries like car manufacturing, and they have been for many years. They will soon be coming to the little mom and pop shops near you. In fact, they already are. We're reading these headlines rather regularly here, almost every few days, of a pizza shop that's using a robotic arm, or a cafe that's using a robotic arm, or even an ice cream shop that's using a robotic arm, because the difficult friction to replacing your restaurant's staff with robotic arms is the programming of it is still rather cumbersome and technically difficult and challenging and expensive, and it requires experts to program these arms. Google itself has just launched, we read the headline 3 weeks ago, they're going to solve that problem. They're going to make it as easy as programming a robotic arm as it is to build a little house in Minecraft. So as soon as that becomes frictionless and simple, and maybe even through an iPhone app, then every mom and pop will do the calculations of, should we have a Subway sandwich is going to be like, if you're a Subway sandwich owner or a McDonald's owner, oh, by the way, we just read the headline that they were replacing the French fry maker with robots now. In which company was that? Fatburger? Which was the first to say that? They've done the initial pilot. It went really well. They're going to,
Was it Wendy's?
It might have been Wendy's. So they're going to roll it out across the company now, because they've already done the test. They already did the analysis. Oh boy, we can make a whole lot more French fries for a much lower cost with these robotic arms around the clock. Well, guess what? You can do the burgers too. Some places already have done it. And so your fast food restaurants are all going to be, the kitchens are going to become completely automated. The math is already there. We already know it. It's been tested. The tests show the results. We just got the results. This is all coming in as we speak. So and this is happening now in fast food, even without the simplification of the software, so that it becomes much cheaper and easier to program these robotic arms. And
it's going to happen faster as they move up the minimum wage. And that was actually Elon's point, Tyler. Not that people necessarily didn't want to work, that you're going to have a large number of people who don't have the skill set, to do, other things, and they're being replaced by automation, and, they're just never going to learn to, code software or something. And so the government's going to have to support all these people.
And to highlight how useful these robotic arms are, if you attach a camera to it, and most of them do have cameras, although a lot of them don't. If they're doing purely repetitious stuff, they don't need a camera. But if you put a camera on them, they become very intelligent indeed very quickly. To highlight that point, they're now beating, ping pong players. You just put a ping pong paddle in the arm of the robot, put in the software to play ping pong. Next thing you know, it's beating everybody in your, within 100 square miles of your house. It's now you have the best ping pong player. It's a robotic arm with a camera. So tell me that they can't make a fucking hamburger. You were going to say, Chris?
Yeah, these robots, these cobots, they're called, they don't require a ton of training, because you just put them in what's called training mode, and you just move the arm like, okay, you do this motion and you flip the burger, and you take it out of training mode and the thing just keeps doing it.
That's where
And
the AI software part is coming in. That's what Google's doing,
yeah,
which is they're bringing AI to the training. You put a camera on this thing, you add in the AI, and now we've got also the interface to the AI. It used to be very cumbersome to train AIs, but now OpenAI just showcased their new innovation. Someone remind me what it's called, where you just speak verbally to the thing or with very simple text inputs, and Codex. So now
Codex, yeah, I've had a good go with Codex though. It's super oversold in their videos, in fairness. I mean, it'll develop fast, but when you try it and actually try and get it to do something you want, it's almost impossible to even reproduce their demos. You go slightly off track, and it just doesn't do what you want. So it just to temper it a little bit, it's amazing, and it's very much a sales pitch in the video from playing with it.
I agree
So
with you,
it's
Ben.
both awe-inspiring. It's both awe-inspiring and crap at the same time, if you like.
I heard a lady want to speak.
Oh no, Cheryl, I was agreeing with Ben. I was trying myself. I mean, it's good, but it is a bit of a oversell also in the pitch. But I think it will go there eventually.
Yeah, the possibility is incredible with it. It's just that today, very much watching their presentation, it's very, very, very cherry picked what they do and what they say. You stray off what they're doing by a few letters or words, and you'll get a completely different result, and you go down a rabbit hole. So, and you do the whole conversation about do you need to understand the code it's producing? You do, I think, to a reasonably large extent. If you don't understand the JavaScript it dumps in the right hand side, so that you know whether it's reasonable, not reasonable, whether you should be deleting the last thing or keeping the last thing, then I think you're a bit lost. I've got a couple of people who don't know coding at all to try it, and they struggle even more. So, but the possibilities are incredible with GPT-4 Plus and so on. It's going to be amazing, especially that business in VR that I think we've talked about before, where you can imagine saying, make me a room, no, older style, no, it's bigger, okay, put a cabinet in there, whatever. That type of stuff would be incredible. So, possibilities are awesome.
Let's get into the next headlines here. We covered this one, that Washington Post, that Facebook says the post that cast doubt on COVID-19 vaccine was the most popular on all of Facebook from January through March. And kudos to them for swallowing that bitter pill. The next one is, we covered the Afghan, where will they go? And we're running out of water. And this one from Abjit, sea level rise is killing trees along the Atlantic coast, creating ghost forests that are visible from space, according to space.com. Throughout coastal North Carolina, evidence of forest die-off is everywhere. The next one is how the West Coast drought could cause water wars. Or it says more water wars. I'm not aware of any existing water wars on the West Coast, but it's a YouTube video that he just tweeted out. Water is a cornerstone of economic activity, blah, blah, blah. The next one from Ken is an interesting one from CNBC. This 29-year-old YouTube millionaire has a good chance to become the next governor of California. Kevin Paffrath is running as a Democratic in the California recall election, and he's leading the polls among replacement candidates. If Gavin Newsom, the current governor of California, is recalled, then it looks like the winner will likely be this 29-year-old YouTuber. Fantastic. I can't wait for those viral videos. And then Evan from the audience just sent in a really remarkable video of Snapchat and Gucci's AR experience, augmented reality of these new Gucci shoes on this user's feet, and this user points the camera at their feet. They're using their smartphone. They open the app, they look at their feet, and now these Gucci shoes pop out of a box, float in the air, and then jump on their feet. And then once they're on the feet, start changing while they're on the feet. And it's all about virtual goods on your actual feet. And how useful are those? Well, that's not so useful when you're walking. You can only see them when you hold your camera up to your feet, but it becomes a lot more interesting once you're wearing AR goggles all the time, or glasses, like the Apple glasses when they come out, or the Snapchat glasses, or whoever's. So will we be so worried about what our physical shoes look like if we're wearing VR or AR glasses, and we can the AR glasses tell us that we're wearing these amazing Gucci sneakers. The interesting bit is, in this AR world that geeks are getting very excited about, if that AR world is purely imaginary, these shoes that you see on your feet are not physical. They're not in the physical world. They're in this virtual metaverse world. If we start spending more and more of our time and money and energy, and people are spending millions of dollars on AR land that doesn't exist in physical land, it's just ones and zeros. Just to give you evidence, I make that point just to kind of highlight as a strong point of people are investing millions of dollars of virtual land in this metaverse. The more and more time.
So they're making daydreaming legend.
My point, that's right. Daydreaming is becoming legitimized. My point is, we have real worlds in the physical world. Climate change isn't in VR; it's in the physical world. And my point is we're reaching this kind of interesting utopia and dystopia simultaneously, where you'll be able to have an AR VR world that is anything you ever dreamed, the pure utopia. However, the physical world is reaching dystopia simultaneously. So it's a really wild how this is all shaping up, and it's there no doubt people will start writing articles about that. The next one's from Dr. Fran. It's from MSN, that the U.S. State Department recently hit by a cyber attack. Lovely. The question is who. So let's crack that one open to see if it's beyond why they buried it beyond the headline. The U.S. State Department recently hit by a cyber attack, and notifications of possible serious breach were made by the Department of Defense Cyber Command. It's unclear when the breach was discovered, but it's believed to have happened a couple of weeks ago. The reporter added that the State Department's ongoing mission to evacuate Americans and allied refugees from Afghanistan has not been affected. Without confirming any incident, a knowledgeable source told Reuters the State Department has not experienced significant disruptions and has not had its operations impeded in any way. The department takes seriously its responsibility to safeguard its information and continuously takes steps to ensure information is protected for security reasons. We are not in a position to discuss the nature or scope of any alleged cybersecurity incidents at this time. Okay, so how to get in the news? And that leads to a related article I just saw that they're warning Americans of businesses are vulnerable to attack and whatever. So the next big headline is from Evan, that Twitter's Blue Sky project could conventionalize the Fediverse for social media. Twitter has announced developments. It is in its decentralized social media project called Blue Sky, appointing cryptocurrency developer Jay Graber as the project leader. And the project could see Twitter create a federated social network or Fediverse, where social media apps are independently hosted on servers but can interact and communicate with each other. The Fediverse hands control back to the user, who can choose the app that best suits their needs and still have the freedom to interact with users on different apps. Email is a good example of independently hosted social networking platforms using the Fediverse, because it's an email protocol, which is an open protocol used by lots of big apps like Google with Gmail or Microsoft with Hotmail or whatever. It's interoperable. Each company has a central control system, but emails can be sent and received from different email platforms. Blue Sky could create a more competitive market within the social media industry, protect user data from cyber attacks, and give users more autonomy over their data. And more importantly, governments can't shut it down. Government can't shut down email like they can the individual apps that run email, but not the protocols of email. So unless they shut down all the servers running all the email, well, that's every server on the fucking planet for the most part. So, yeah, it's a really interesting project they're working on called Blue Sky, and you can read all about it from the tweet I just twatted on Twitter. Thank you, Evan, for that one. Twitter also working on, Joe Williams sends in this one that the headline reads, Twitter working on rules and replay option for their new Twitter Spaces, which is their carbon copy clone of Clubhouse, which is, they're they now are going to have a replay option. So when the space ends, their version of a Clubhouse room, they call it Twitter Space, when their Twitter Space ends, you'll have a button to replay the conversation that occurred there. So a micro blogging site Twitter's Spaces is about to get more options, including replay and even rules for participants in a live chat. These new features are still under development and were discovered in Twitter's code by developers. And more specifically, the code indicates that Twitter is adding 4 new options to Spaces that could give hosts more control over the room, and wants to provide rules for their Spaces. Now, for now, the rules are unclear, but this will probably include a section for hosts to define what can and cannot be said on Spaces. There will also be a new option to block Spaces, which may indicate that Twitter will let users restrict a live conversation to a specific group of people, just like you can do with your current tweets. You can define who's able to participate in the Spaces. You can block people from being able to know that the space exists, basically. However, but that's same in Clubhouse. You can make the room private, essentially, so it's only known to club users. At present, the only way to join Spaces is when the conversation is live. After Spaces are over, users cannot listen to it again. Now it seems Twitter wants to change that but most likely by a replay. So that's what's going on at the moment. And thank you for that one, Joe, for sending that in. The next one's from Professor Osif via, it says, Pfizer moves towards an oral COVID therapy. Researchers in the U.S. have described a novel antiviral agent against severe acute respiratory syndrome currently in clinical trials. Pfizer's new anti-COVID oral drug, if proven effective in large trials, no more booster jabs every several months. Just take a pill.
They'll probably just add it to the water and make it a subscription service.
Or it could be just like fluoride. You could just add it to the water, right?
If you would get an effective dose that way. Vaccinated people may be more vulnerable to serious illness from the COVID Delta variant than previously thought, is the headline from Bloomberg. Yeah, Delta's.
Yeah, the number. Sorry, Tyler. The number out here is 30% of the cases in Los Angeles County are breakthrough. Or no, I should say 30% of the hospitalizations, I think they're saying, is breakthrough.
That makes more sense. Yeah, vaccinated people may be.
No, I think it's no, Chris. I think it's the opposite. I think it's just the ones that test, tested.
Test
so
results?
it's of all,
Vaccinated people may be more vulnerable to serious illness from COVID Delta variant than previously thought. Well, according to whose thought? According to my thought, no. I we've seen it here in Thailand that people, even everyone who had Sinovac got incredibly sick with Delta here in Thailand. So that's not different from my thought. So whose thought are you referring to?
Well, even the way that it's worded might be more vulnerable than originally thought, but certainly not more vulnerable than not being vaccinated.
Yeah. So the next one's from Cheryl. The FDA warned Americans not to use drugs for livestock to prevent COVID. You are not a horse. You are not a cow. Stop it, according to the FDA. Which they're commenting on ivermectin or ivermectin or what is the... this one from Wired. A crashed Israeli spacecraft spilled tardigrades on the moon. That's the headline. And these are tardigrades, also known as water bears, are microscopic animals that can survive for years without food or water, and they're now on the moon. The Bereshit lunar lander carried thousands of books, DNA samples, and a few thousand water bears to the moon, but did any of them survive the crash? We don't know. Just before midnight on April 11th, and everyone at the Israel Aerospace Industries Mission Control Center in Israel had their eyes fixed on 2 large projector screens. On the left screen was a stream of data being sent back to Earth from its lunar lander, which was about to become the first private spacecraft to land on the moon. The right screen featured a crude animation of the spacecraft firing its engines as it prepared for a soft landing in the Sea of Serenity, but only seconds before the scheduled landing, The numbers on the left screen stopped. Mission Control had lost contact with the spacecraft and it crashed into the moon shortly thereafter. And now you know why there's a whole bunch of water bears on the moon. The question is, can they live there? We will find out. India to exceed mission cut target on climate change. The India Times is reporting India is set to exceed its targets for cutting greenhouse gas emissions and boosting the share of non-fossil fuels in electricity generation by any further amount than previously. And Lookcast sends in this one. Can hospitality's recruitment crisis ever be fixed? Brexit and COVID have exacerbated a problem that has been building for years, but some restaurants are trying to attract and keeping staff by changing the culture, and they can't get chefs or waiters or waitresses or servers to come back to the hospitality industries, just as robots are ready to replace them. Oh boy, this isn't going to end well. So the next
pitchfork time soon.
Get out, yeah, or the robot killing electromagnetic pulse guns. Electric vehicle only zone, an EV only zone launched in Gurgaon in India. Diesel and combustion autos prohibited now in one area of India. Yeah, electric vehicles only, and you can see them here in the article I'm tweeting out now. Chief Minister kicked off the e-rickshaws from Galleria Market at around 11 a.m. while 150 e-rickshaws were flagged off. Yeah, you'll start seeing this as well. Not only will you have e-vehicle only zones, you'll have autonomous only vehicle zones. In fact, you already have them in some areas, notably in China, but it's clear that's where things are headed. And then the next one is from Albert.
Tyler,
yes.
Ranjit
Hey,
here.
Ranjit.
There was also a connected news a few days back that government has launched a new policy for scrapping your old vehicles. So they're gonna give tax incentive and some cuts on the new vehicles you're gonna buy if you are scrapping your vehicles through a proper medium rather than dumping it somewhere else. So this is also part of this green, cutting the green, going towards more green and more sustainable way of manufacturing and reusing. Yeah.
Okay. And then Vinay, is Vinay on stage? You just sent one in about a Finnish.
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
am. I'm here. Yeah, so there's a Finnish, we were talking a couple of days ago about all the space debris and the space junk. And I tweeted two articles to you. I don't know if you saw the first one. SpaceX Starlink satellites are responsible for over half of close encounters in orbit. So, and then a Finnish company, Rocket Lab, is launching a Finnish CubeSat, which is going to essentially twirl and drag space junk back into orbit where it will disintegrate. So they're testing that. It'll essentially fly around, pick up space debris, and then gravitationally pull it back into Earth so that it can disintegrate. So they have to clean it up. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, some more interesting headlines here. Yeah, thank you for that one, Vinay. Just tweeted that out. Google issues warning for 2 billion Chrome users. I think that's all of them, isn't it? Google has issued a serious upgrade warning to call all Chrome users worldwide. I guess they're only announcing this because there's an update available now. In an official blog post, Google has revealed 7 high-rated security threats have been discovered in Chrome, with the vulnerabilities impacting Chrome users on all major operating systems. Google is currently giving little away about the flaws. This is standard practice as the company attempts to limit information to stop the spread of these vulnerabilities to hackers in time for people to protect them. So update your Chrome browsers, everybody. They're vulnerable. And this news coming out of Australia from Poppy, Google founder admits he created a revenge site against his own wife. Say what? In 2018, Google shirked off its unofficial motto, "Don't be evil." Maybe that was a sign, it says. Billions are at stake as robotics genius known as high-tech Dr. Dolittle and his estranged wife begin divorce settlement proceedings. In 2018, Google shut down Scott Hassan, 51, who wrote much of the original code that powers the search giant, is embroiled in a nasty divorce battle that has raged for 7 years. Well, he's not a Google founder. You can't call him a founder just because he was an early employee. Founders are a very specific thing, and there's only 2 Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. So really weird of this. This Australian news site chose to use the words Google quote-unquote founder admits he created revenge site against his own wife. This guy's not a founder. They know he's not a founder. The whole world knows this guy's not one of the 2 founders. So why did they call him a founder? Well, because that gets clicks. Right? If it just said early Google employee admits he created revenge site against his own wife, that doesn't quite have the same viral clickability, does it, as Google founder admits he created revenge site against his own wife. So the question, News Australia, is why are you using just a blatant lie in your headline? I mean, it's one thing to bend the truth. This is just a flat out fucking lie. And you're wondering why you're dying. And you're wondering why people don't believe media. And you wonder, are there real consequences to doing shit like this? Well, you have rooms of people in Clubhouse and everywhere on the internet who just don't believe anything they read anymore, in part because of you fuckers like this just doing blatant fucking lying in your fucking headline. Forget the article. Forget if there's a lie in the article. Your headline is a manufactured fucking lie. Knock this nonsense off. There's actual real consequences for doing shit like that. So in 2018, this Scott Hassan, 51, who no one's ever heard of, even I've never heard of him, who wrote much of the original code that powers Google, is embroiled in a nasty divorce battle that has raged for 7 years. And apparently, he is admitting that he created a revenge site against his own wife. Although, who knows? Because this article obviously has no problem lying. So why should I bother reading your fucking article? Because your whole shit is just fucking nonsense bullshit lies. Why should I believe any sentence in this article you bothered to write if I can clearly see from the headline that you don't give a shit about lying? Holy fuck. What a disgrace you are, News Australia. Go fuck yourself. That's just really fucked up shit. So, Albert Bates sends in this one from the Washington Post that Pakistan's mission to plant 10 billion trees across the country. A province in Pakistan first pledged to plant 1 billion trees in 2015. The initiative was so successful that the country is now in the midst of a 10 billion trees initiative. And now August marks the beginning of monsoon season in Pakistan. With the rain comes another bushy stretch of trees, and thank God, now they're doing the 10 billion tree tsunami to fight climate change. A province that first pledged to plant 1 billion trees in 2015, the initiative so successful that the country is now in the midst of a 10 billion tree tsunami. Fantastic. That's how we do it. Kudos, Pakistan. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has arrived in Singapore, her first official overseas destination outside of the Americas. She will meet with Singapore President and Prime Minister, and an orchid will be named in her honor in a ceremony. And somebody else sent in this same headline. BB did, and it says U.S. Vice President Harris will meet Singapore's leaders on Monday on the first working day of a trip to Southeast Asia aimed at bolstering. Why is she there? Here's why she's there, according to Reuters. Aimed at bolstering ties as part of Washington's efforts to counter China's growing influence. ... And I'll add this part in myself, because they're basically bringing all the allies together in the region because shit's about to go down. It's simple as that. Vice President Harris is there to make sure Singapore, Philippines, Vietnam, we're all on the same side, right? It's us against China, right? That's what they're doing. It's as simple as that. And then the question is, why are they doing it now? It's fairly obvious why they're doing it now. China keeps claiming and insisting. They did at their 100th birthday, the CCP's 100-year birthday party, which was about a month ago, and they claimed more than ever the firm commitment to recapturing Taiwan in incredibly concrete, clear terms. So now all the navies are there. UK, US, Australia, India, France, Germany, Philippines. Philippines is now letting the U.S. open a military base there. Japan's there. What's going on? You going to take this thing back or not, China? Because if not, we're going to all declare Taiwan as an independent country. And then what are you going to do with all of our navies there?
Tyler, may I add something to this China issue? Because connecting this with the 20 minutes ago water crisis thing, I'm guessing that the government of China, or more correctly, the party, the CCP, is preparing for very turbulent times. And then all the many activities they have done in the latest, let's say, 3 months make much more sense. And I want just to point to a little silver line. It's in the thread of the you shared this map with the water stress, yeah, the global map, and in the thread there is some links about desalination startups, about nanomembranes, and so not to leave us all with desperation. There is still technologies to be invested beyond reforestation, for instance. And I'm not a fan of nuclear fission. Yeah, we had this news about nuclear fusion last week, and we don't like so much fission, but it could be that we are so desperate in a situation that we need as much energy as possible. And there will be finally this comeback many people are waiting for the old technology of nuclear fission even. And it's a pity, but this could happen. Thank you.
Okay, so here we go. In a mad rush here, we've got this one from Poppy from Financial Times sister publication Sifted in the EU that Europe has now created more $1 billion unicorn companies than China. Europe's bumper year has pushed it to overtake China's total unicorn count for the first time, to which I remind Europe, you're not a country. China's a country. It's not an apt comparison, comparing a whole bunch of countries calling themselves Europe to one country calling itself China. But you compare yourself to India too. It's kind of weird. You want to
come on, Tyler.
Yeah?
Tyler, if China can combine Taiwan to win the medals table, come on, we'll give them a break. Give Europe a break.
What about Asia? Shouldn't we be comparing Europe and Asia, not Europe and China? Just an idea. Anyway, but you have a fair point.
Yeah, but by the way, just a quick thing. Tyler, since we're on unicorns, we have a new unicorn in India today. Company called Vedantu, the 5th online education unicorn.
And that brings us to number 26.
26,
There we go. India's having the world's biggest year of unicorns. Here are the new 20.
Renee, when's yours?
Yeah. Well,
when's mine? I'm just taking shares in all of them.
Here are the new 2021 unicorn startups founded by women. I just tweeted out, so you can see which of these unicorns are founded by women. And the next one is this one from Cheryl. Oh, the Kamala Harris, we covered that. OnlyFans shows Visa and MasterCard are choke points of online speech, according to protocol. And thank you to Evan for that one. And then Evans also sent in this one that U.S. universities face another school year of too few Chinese students. U.S. higher education universities face having too few Chinese students. COVID and rising tensions threaten the appeal of U.S. colleges in China. No, and in part because China is also trying to keep those students from, that's a really weird issue. But, that's a whole, we could spend a whole room on that. The next one is from Rolling Stone, And it says, is this giant hydroponic greenhouse in Kentucky the future of farming? Called App Harvest. Founder Jonathan Webb is on a quest to lead the ag tech revolution, transforming Kentucky's economy and ensuring global food supply. And you can see this very cool robotic farm that they have there. And then we covered Austria's leaders not welcoming any refugees. Now, this is weird. Shanghai airport facility in COVID lockdown is being reported. Cargo backlog expected. Pudong Airport, which is Shanghai's airport, is the biggest cargo point in China. The price per kilogram has already doubled from today's local news, but now China itself is reporting they are back to zero COVID.
Shanghai's not China for this case.
Why is that?
Anyway, so somebody...
It's the same reason Taiwan got the medal. Taiwan selectively China.
I guess if it's in the duty-free part of the airport, technically it's not necessarily China. It's the duty-free section of the shipping, right? So
they do us.
Yeah, somebody found the Wall Street Journal article and answering our question, which fast food franchise has replaced humans with robotic arms for the French fries, and it was White Castle. And so thank you to, I think it was Lucia who sent that in. And then Jeff Carroll sent in an update that the water bears, the Israeli water bears who just crash landed on the moon, apparently didn't survive their crash landing. Microscopic water bears were fired inside bullets to test whether they could have survived Israel's failed moon mission, plus how the pandemic is hobbling scientific mobility. So there's that. And then we've got this one from Poppy. FedEx turns to robotics to handle surge in e-commerce packages because they can't hire humans fast enough. And now FedEx is going to use robots in their fulfillment factories. FDA set to give Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine full approval today. And how will that impact people's willingness or hesitancy to take it? We will find out in about 24 hours. And then Poppy has this one, how China is militarizing autonomous underwater vehicle technologies. Indonesian fishermen have regularly reeled in these autonomous Chinese underwater drones. I wonder if they can sell them on eBay. Profound changes are underway in Earth's oceans and ice, according to the IPCC. Humans are unequivocally warming the planet, and it's starting to slow down the Gulf Stream, and that means Scandinavia will become a big fucking glacier if that Gulf Stream continues to slow down. The Carnival Panorama relaunches, and who's this from? Oh, that's the boat. Carnival Cruise Line Panorama has relaunched, and these were the epicenters of COVID breakouts in America. So the relaunching of those is quite interesting. A volcanic eruption creates a new island near Iwo Jima. The very southern tip of Japan has a whole bunch of islands, and now there's a new one. A volcano reached above the water surface, creating a new island about 30 nautical miles from Iwo Jima. And Forbes is reporting an urgent warning issued over the future of Bitcoin, even as the crypto market smashes past the $50,000 point. As Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies begin to carve out place amongst traditional assets, technologists are warned that advances in quantum computing might make it more vulnerable, which is true temporarily, but by the time that happens, there will likely be remedies. So that's an ongoing debate. PayPal launches its cryptocurrency service in the UK. And Palantir CEO gives $180,000 to New Hampshire river hermit whose home burned down. Yeah, that's a weird headline, but that's what it says. Goldman Sachs has upgraded multiple stocks to buy. Here are 10 of them, which we're tweeting that out if you want to see what Goldman Sachs is upgrading. Second largest U.S. mortgage lender will now accept Bitcoin in the U.S. Adobe says it will acquire video collaboration software company called Frame.io for $1.25 billion. Facebook pledges to restore more water than it uses by 2030 as part of its effort to combat climate change. And here we now see people now starting to address the water issue, where it's not just about reducing your CO2, it's about being water neutral, that you're not taking more water than you're giving. Facebook pledges to restore more water than it uses. This is going to become a huge new thing as places run out of water, like California, where Facebook is based. And more than $90 million in cryptocurrency were stolen after a top Japanese e-exchange has been hacked. Chinese firm behind the purchase of the UK's largest chip plant warns deal is at risk. Yeah, we've been reading that. CNBC now reporting the Chinese firm behind the purchase of Newport Wafer Fab has admitted that the acquisition could be unwound as the UK realizes we don't want a Chinese company buying our most important chip company. And perhaps America insisted that the UK unwind that deal. Robinhood says crypto revenue jumped by over 45 times in the second quarter of 2021. That's a lot. Californians face higher rideshare bills with Prop 22 reversal. Consumers in California may be on the hook for pricier ride shares and food delivery after a state judge struck down a voter-approved ballot, Prop 22. And now you can see a map of where cryptocurrency is taking off all around the world. Here's a hint. It's Vietnam and India, more than anywhere. And health officials warn people not to treat COVID with drug meant for horses and cows. You are not a horse, says the Food and Drug Administration. Apple and Google face setbacks in healthcare. And winning for how Europe top tech startups get it right. McKinsey's doing a report on why Europe is now seeing a whole lot of new unicorns. And Dublin ranks third as best European tech city of the future, behind London and Paris. And audience analysis company Glimpse sets its sight on a $2 million fundraise. And Israel, Deutsche Welle out of Germany says, DW.com, Israel COVID vaccine booster lowers infection risk. So the third shot is helping people in Israel, where it says Israel finds vaccine booster lowers infection risk. People over 60 saw significant improvement protection from infection and serious illness compared with those who received 2 shots, health ministry data found. And how a $1 billion farm tech startup stumbled, then revamped, is a story from the Wall Street Journal called Operational Missteps Put Indigo Agriculture on the Outs with Farmers in the Early Days. It is revising its offering, and now old line giants are lining up. China passes one of the world's strictest data privacy laws, the Wall Street Journal's reporting. We covered that on Friday. China starts probe into party boss of Alibaba's base. They're investigating Huang Zhu's top government official for serious disciplinary violations. And thank you to Frauds for that one. China tech shares stage rebound after 5-week sell-off. And OnlyFans acknowledges sex workers for the first time on Twitter, facing a backlash for its decision to ban most sexually explicit content. The tweak thanks sex workers, but still offers no solutions. TikTok partners with a blockchain startup, and that's good news for creators. Tweeting that one out. Hackers steal $100 million in Japanese crypto heist. WeChat is testing a handy new payments feature. WeChat revealed that they are testing a new payment method called palm scanning payment. Users link their palms to their WeChat and need to swipe their palms across the scan area of WeChat payment machine to complete the transactions. So WeChat and now is joining Amazon with palm scanning payments. And every evangelical Christian who read the book of Revelations is really starting to get worried, like my friend Dave here in Clubhouse. So
why not just use your phone? I don't understand that. I mean, everybody has their phone on them or a smartwatch on them. NFC is perfectly fine. I don't understand why this move. Is there something in there that I'm not getting?
It must be biosecurity reason or regulatory or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So we've got 3 hours of headlines to go. And thank you to everyone who's tweeting those in. But we will pause and join again. It's 4:00. So in just 5 hours, we will meet again for the second round of Tech News Around the World. So thank you to everybody for helping with another headline-filled Tech News Around the World. We will